Yes. No. Yes. So we have started live streaming, and this is the final session of the PhD coursework presentation, evening session. In last 2 days, we have seen the presentations by all the scholars on research methodology and general area of research, uh, uh, which is selected by the candidates. Today, they are going to make presentation on specific area of their research. So let us start with the first presentation today. Yes, Pallavi, you can come and start your presentation. Yes, you can start.
Is it visible in the proper way? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, in the last session, in the special area of our thesis, today I am going to talk about the turning ends in the stories of Katherine Mansfield, A Cup of Tea and Bliss. Katherine Mansfield is a short story writer. She is modernist. She is from New Zealand. And there are 5 short story collections in her name. Her characters are studied to understand the psychology of human behavior. Let's see her story. One of her story, A Cup of Tea. A Cup of Tea. There are 3 main characters: Rosemary Fell, Philip Fell, and Miss Smith. Rosemary Fell is the central character. Rosemary Fell is a wealthy woman, belongs to upper class. She is a beautiful lady. She is married just before 2 years with Philip Fell. She is fond of reading novels, inspirational novels, and especially the novels from Dostoevsky. She is very much inspired by the characters of Dostoevsky, who are very interested in adventures. Rosemary Fell one morning come out from her home and go to shopping, go to an antique shop to buy something precious, very precious. There she found a box of velvet. She could not afford the price of this box, so she says that I will come again. Now here we can see that Rosemary Fell is such a lady, such a wealthy lady. She can spend her wealth in such a useless things also. Then when she come out of the shop, she meets a girl, a poor girl, who has dressed very roughly, very thin, pale skinned girl named Miss Smith. She asked for the money for a cup of tea. Here we can see that yes, there are such people also who cannot afford to survive even. So in this story we can see the class discrimination also. uh, Rosemary fell when she meets with Miss Smith. She thinks that she get a chance. Now she had a chance to show her nobility. Now she can show her generosity. and she says that come with me to my class, to my home. I will give you a cup of tea. There, Miss Smith is somewhat afraid that she can give me to the police also. So she refuses to come with Rosemary Fell. But Rosemary Fell thinks that now she has got a chance to do some adventures. Now she can talk with her friends that yes, she has done something very kind. So she took the girl just as the piece of her adventure, just as the piece of her nobility. She took the girl to her home. When they went their home, Rosemary Fell uh, offers her a cup of tea, and then she tries to comfort Miss Smith also. When after some times, Philip Fell, her husband, enters the room, and he sees that there is a strange lady there. So she asks Rosemary that what is going on. Rosemary Fell explains that what is going on. She thinks that this is not to be done. A stranger cannot be help in this way. So he says that let her go. Just in one or two argument, he tries to insist Rosemary to let her go, but she is not ready to leave the chance. Then he says, now he changes her dialogues very cleverly, and he says that she is very pretty. She admires her beauty. Here, Rosemary Fell gets a sudden change in her behavior. She feels some insecurity for her married life. She let Miss Smith go, and at the end, she asks her husband that, "Am I pretty?" Here, we can see that just a dialogue of a male can change all the behavior of his wife. Okay, all the happiness vanished here. In another story, Bliss, there are main characters are Bertha Young, who is the central character, Harry Young, Bertha's husband, and Pearl Fontaine, a special guest for Bertha. Bertha is a heroine of this story, Bliss. Bertha is today very happy. She feels her happiness in the pear tree, which is in her garden and which is in almost its blossom. Bertha, there is an party in the home, and Bertha is the host. There comes many guests. Then one special guest come, Pearl Fountain, and Bertha feels some attachment with her beauty. During the party, Bertha feels that her husband Harry is very cold, is not so polite with Pearl. So she insists her husband to be polite with Pearl. But at the end, Bertha witnesses an intimate moment while Pearl and Harry are making arrangement to meet on the next day. At that moment, Bertha is shocked and feels her happiness going into the darkness. She thinks that from the morning till the evening she was very happy. It was just a false because something is going to be very dangerous. And Bertha cries out, wondering what is going to happen next. She feels insecurity. By these two stories, we can see the behavior of the heroine, the main characters, and how they are driven out. Both the ladies in both the stories, we can see that they feel very insecurity. They lost their excitement at the end of the story, and it is not their any mistake, but it is caused because of their husbands. So we can see that in the society, something very marvelous, females lose many times just because of the male domination behavior. So these were my presentations. Now the sources for my presentation: a cup of tea from Katherine Mansfield and Bliss from Katherine Mansfield. Thank you. You can ask me questions. Yes.
My question is the utterance of Rosemary's Bell in the story. Am I pretty? An emotional change signifies what in critical sense?
Yes, in critical sense, we can see that in the beginning of the story, the writer mentions that Rosemary Fell's husband, Philip Fell, adores her for her beauty. And at the end of the story, we see that it is Rosemary herself who asks her husband that, "Am I pretty?" Which kind of insecurity she feels. And I told that it is a man who can divert a female's emotion in this way. She was very excited to help someone, one poor, but she changes her mood, she changes her plan just because of a dialogue, just because of the admiration of Miss Smith by her husband. So we can see this situation very critically. We can see that how she is treated, how Rosemary Fell is treated. Actually, in the story, Rosemary Fell thinks that she is going to treat Miss Smith, but actually, yes, Miss Smith is economically very poor. But how poor Rosemary Fell herself is, though she is wealthy economically, but how she feels insecurity at the end of the story. So this is the center key words for this story mentioned by her husband, that am I pretty? Yes.
Which part of Bhatt makes you considerate of Bhatt?
Sorry.
Which part of Bhatt work makes you considerate towards?
Just like a female, just like a wife, at the last moment when she feels her insecurity, the insecurity in her married life, that she doesn't understand her husband's behavior. She in reality she does not know what her husband is. This point of her character considers what Bertha is actually. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so
Other questions you can reply in the chat.
Okay, sir.
You can save some time.
Okay, thank you.
Next one. Check your comments and reply.
Is it visible to all of you? So, good afternoon to everyone. My topic for today is attention economy of the digital publishing sphere. Uh, Books literature is always concerned with how a book is published, right? Like what kind of changes are the publishers making to that particular content or your expressions which you think is your original content therein, right? And the a lot depends on how a book is published also, like how does it look or how is it binded. So the kind of impression which a book might have for a reader depends a lot on these things also, apart from of course the content of the story or the drama or whatever literary aspect there is. So there is a distinctive characteristic to the works which are published in the digital age, and I'm going to talk about them, as well as I'm going to talk about what are the characteristic, or rather how is e-lit text being published, and what are certain specific characteristics which they possess. uh, so yeah, so let's get a kind of an introduction to how publication is working in the digital age first. So first of all, the very first thing we need to keep in mind is today publication is no longer a kind of a hierarchical structure or a hegemonic structure which lays someone at the top of the hierarchy and they own every medium of publication. Today it's a very democratic phenomenon, democratic as in everyone owns the means to publish their work, right? Today you don't need to, like, approach someone who is owning a particular press and then request them, please publish my story or publish my book. Today you have the digital medium with you, you have means and mediums, a lot of in a varied range of characteristics, as well as various options for publication today. So it's a lot of democratic phenomenon where everyone can be a publisher, like everyone can publish their work on their own, they don't need someone to, grant them permission to publish and things like that. We study in the history of literature a lot about how a work was published and what kind of hurdles did the author face while publishing that particular text, right? So we find a lot of stories where the particular work was neglected or rejected by a particular publisher because of its content or because of certain views which were included in that text, and so on and so forth. Today you don't need to face all those things if you can just have a digital medium at your hands, right? So it's a very democratic phenomenon. Next is the problem. Now, where are we stuck in the digital age when it comes to publication? So, this particular quote by Arlyle Scanes is quite notable, where today the focus is more on discoverability in an age of hyperabundance. Now you have so many things available to you. That is, hyperabundance means there is an abundant quantity of texts and abundant quantity of mediums to publish, right? Now how do you make your work distinct? Like, how do you distinguish your work? What is so new, what is so original, what is something which is separates your work from other works of digital literatures or the digital space, right? Because we have a continuous section of works which were originally published in print and they are being digitized also, so that section is also there. Now when you publish a work in the digital age today, you are not only competing with a elite text that is purely published or created on the digital platform, you are also competing with these digitized print literature texts also, right? So how is your text discoverable? How will people identify your work in the digital age, right, in an age where there is so much content available? Other than that, there is these are the characteristics which a particular text should have in order to be published in the digital age. The very first one is accessibility. If you look at the highlighted second point there, accessibility is very much important. How easily accessible is your work? The more accessible it is, the more popular it will be, or the more people will read that, right? Now if it is too much in the remote corners of a particular library, hardly anyone who will go there have the hassle of going there, searching the book and then reading it for days and then finishing and then presenting a review. A lot of problems there, right? Second is updatability. How much is your work updated or rather upgraded with the times we are living in? Like, how much can you change your work? How much flexible it is? Like, flexibility is also a kind of a point which is associated with updatability. How much can you update it? What are the new versions in which you can present your particular text? That is also important. Is it searchable or not? Searchability, right? Are you able to search and find your particular text on the web platform or not is also important, right? If it is not searchable, well, it might affect the popularity of that particular text or the readership of that particular text. These days people are so much aware about these things that you might just log on into a particular reading website and you have tens and 15s of a list of books which they will suggest you to read based on your choices, right? Based on the books which you have liked for reading. So that is also important. Is it searchable or not? Are you able to search your work in the vast space of the digital medium? That is also important. Apart from that, portability. How much portable it is, your work. Now, one problem with the bulky texts of English literature were it is not portable enough. Like it is not flexible enough to move around a lot. You can't have an entire bulky text with moving around with you wherever you go. It's really difficult to carry, right? It's so heavy and it's so bulky that you cannot fit it into a particular luggage or anything, right? So now this is a particular characteristic of digital literature. It moves with you wherever you go. You can easily just search for it or you can have it in your device wherever. You can save it on the cloud, right? It should be portable enough. It should be able to move with you. That is the idea of portability. Flexibility, I've already explained. Like it should be flexible enough to adapt to various mediums, various modes of the digital medium there. Affordability is again important. Now, if for example in a problem which we face today in terms of hypertext fictions is this: it's not affordable enough, it's costly. The hypertexts which are published are only available either on a particular device, that is the Mac or those kind of devices there, or it's really difficult to afford them on the web platform itself. So if you want to read, hypertext is really costly, right? But if you want to read a twine fiction, for example, if you want to read a blog story, for example, you can read it very easily. It's available everywhere, and that too for free reading. So that is again, affordability is also important. Again, another affordability criteria which is important here is: are you able to afford the digital medium for yourself or not? Right? As a writer, are you able to afford that much time? Are you able to afford that much devices for yourself in order to express your thoughts or not? That is also again important. Another is intertextuality. Now, this is something which distinguishes elit from the traditional print literature a lot. So today, the stories which we find ourselves reading are a lot intertextual in nature. A lot of overlapping happens in terms of the content as well as the how the content is presented. So, a particular literary text will not only be employing one mode of expression, as we have discussed yesterday, right? A digital text is one which is overlapping a lot of modes in itself, while whereas expression is concerned, right? So that is the idea of intertextuality. A lot of intertextual references you will find. Also, a lot of stories are inspired by how much classical literature the writer of that particular elite text has read, right? So, if, for example, I have read T.S. Eliot, if I have read Virginia Woolf, my writing will somewhere be affected by that particular text, or somewhere I will be having that kind of a thought. Okay, acha, T.S. Eliot used to write like this, or there is some kind of an expression which will be reflected through my writing. Even if I am developing just an AI of my own, which is generating texts of literature, the codes I encode in that particular AI will be affected by all these things also. So that is also an idea of intertextuality, where the older classical texts are affecting the way elite texts are produced and published. So that is also a very important thing. And ultimately, of course, multimedia. Like you cannot have a single mode when it comes to digital text, which we have discussed yesterday. Right? It's always multimodal. It can never be a single monomodal in nature. So these are the things you have to keep in mind when you are publishing through the digital medium today. Or if you are publishing a machine generated text in a traditional mode also, you will have to keep all these things in mind. Next is, how is this changing the role of the writer or the author? Like the simple understanding is this: when the printing press was invented, the writers had to change their roles from just being speakers of a particular story to writers of a particular story, right? From just expressions to a written mode of expression there, right? Now, similarly, that kind of change has also happened when it comes to writers and authors of the digital age, right? The digital publication platform and the attention economy, which I will talk later, have affected the way in which writers are understood, writers act, writers write, authors are understood. The whole idea of authorship is again into question. So these are the changes which I find quite notable in terms of the publication scenario of the digital age. The first one is the end of the romanticized notion of the human genius, right? You are not the only one generating literature. That is the very first thing you should realize, right? Today, machines are capable of writing literature also. So it's not just you who are the idealized person creating literature, not you only who has the creative impulse, sort of. So that idea is completely ended today because of the existence of the digital medium and the electronic medium, of course. Rise of the demotic author. Now, demotic authorship is a bit different from how authorship has been understood so far in traditional print literature. Demotic authorship is basically based on the amount of interactivity an author has with their audience or readers. Right. So, for example, if I am writing a particular story on Wattpad, that's a digital platform for publishing stories, I will have constant interaction with my readers through comment section or chat boxes there. You are constantly in a kind of an interactive environment with your readers, and a lot of times your writing will be affected by what they have to say about what you write, right? And therefore this is the very idea of demotic authorship, which Arlyle Stain is the first one to introduce. I have cited the reference in the last slide. You can check it out. That particular book is really important to understand digital publishing and authorship kind of a phenomenon today. So demotic authors are a new phase of authorship in the history of authorship and writing processes. Next is self-publishing leads to mass authorship. Right now, today you don't have a particular place where you go and submit your write-up, and then the particular printing press as well as the publishers will work day and night to design the hardcovers and all those things, and then they will publish your work in a particular format. Today, you can just be a self publisher also. Now, because of this phenomenon, there is mass authorship happening. Everyone, as I pointed out earlier, everyone can be an author today. That is the idea of mass authorship. So, if, for example, if you're running a page on Instagram and posting your quotes or posting your poetry or even posting your stories through various slides or even reels, all those things are a part of authorship today. Like you are a particular author or a publisher of your content. Now, what does this lead to? Of course, mass authorship. Everyone, each and every one of us is a publisher today, right? So that is the idea of mass authorship. Everyone can be a writer. Everyone can be a particular publisher there. Then it becomes writing becomes an everyday practice. So it's not just where kind of a Wordsworth kind of an idea where you like sit in tranquility and then decide, think for hours and hours, and aloof yourself from the world and then decide on a creative idea and then write it. No, right? It's an everyday practice. You write every single day. In fact, some of us also write every single minute of the day, every single hour of the day. So now, what is this kind of writing? Right? This kind of a writing is because of the mass authorship phenomenon. Like since everybody is writing today, a lot of writing is happening on a daily basis. Right? The ratio of people writing has increased a lot, whether in one form or the other. So it's an everyday practice. Other change is the book transforms from the read-only format to the read and write format. So the book itself has changed now, right? And since you are the writer of this particular age, you should know this, that your book is not just a read-only phenomenon. People are going to write into it also. If you look at digital text as well as e-lit text, a lot of content depends upon the inputs of the reader. So, for example, let's take the example of a twine fiction. The twine fiction idea is you click on a particular word, the particular content moves forward onto the next page. There you will have to input something, right? A word or a sentence or a phrase, and depending upon your input, the story will progress, right? Now, this kind of an idea of a text, of a literary text, is completely new. So it is not just read only where you just flip pages and read. Readers are also collaborators in the particular writing process. So a particular text is not just the property of the author, it is also a kind of the readers are also sharing the rights to that particular text when it is published, right? Then is writer as a coder. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, machines are today we find a lot of poetry generator, even prose generators today. A lot of interactive fiction is being published. All those things have led to considering the writer as a coder instead of just being the master of a language, right? Today, you need to learn the code language also in order to be considered an author, not just your language which you speak and write and sing and play, but something which you can encode into codes which can be then fed to a particular AI or a machine, which can generate texts of literary merit. Again, literary merit, a kind of a debatable idea. Sharing the space with AI. Writers of today are sharing the particular publication space as well as popularity space with the AI. They are constantly competing with this phenomenon because, as I've mentioned, how is your text distinguishable from the one which is produced by a particular AI or a machine? That is also a question. And that has led to how writers are writing also. And therefore, the role of the writer or the role of the author is also changing because of the AI, right? So that is one. And collaborative writing process, which I've mentioned earlier. Today, you no longer are the only one writing, expressing yourself, or creating a text. Your readers are also equal partners of that particular text there. Now, based on the digital publishing scenario, you have three types of authors which are identified by Skeins again. One is the hybrid author, second is the indie author, and the third one is the fan fiction writer. Hybrid authors are the ones which have written for themselves also and then published their works themselves also, as well as they have, in a way, signed a contract with the publishing house also. Those are your hybrid writers or hybrid authors, right? Someone who is publishing for themselves and by themselves, as well as they have signed a contract with the publishing house. So, for example, if I am a hybrid author, I would be publishing my content on my own, as well as I would be writing for the publishing house I have signed a contract with. Right. So certain works are completely associated with the publishing house which is publishing my work there. Right. So that kind of a content would be different from the work I published for myself or published by myself. That would be different, right? The one I write for the publishing house and the one I write for myself would be completely different. And that has led to a new type of authorship, and that is hybrid authorship. The difference in content would be based on who is publishing it, right? So that is the idea of hybrid authorship. Next, we have indie authors. Indie authors are individual authors. Basically, the one who is responsible for creating, publishing, circulating their text on their own without the help of any publishing house. That is one we can consider. A demotic author can be considered an indie author also, because they are publishing their content on their own, as well as they will own the rights. The publishing rights will be with them, right? So whatever content they are publishing on their own, that will be owned by them, and they will be, perhaps they might be earning from that particular thing also, right? So that is the idea of the indie authorship. And fan fiction writer, I guess they don't require an introduction itself, but let me just put it briefly. They are writing for the fans, right? Basically, popular literature can be an example of fan fiction authorship, and they publish their works based on the demands of the fans of a particular phenomenon. So that is, these are the three types of authors which you can find in the digital publishing. Then we come to the next idea of the attention economy. Writing in the digital age, attention is very much important to you. If you are a writer of the digital age, how much attention is the audience paying to your work? Like, how much is your text being circulated, being shared with other people? How many times have people clicked on the link of your hypertext? Simple. How many times have people visited your blog, for example? That is your economy for you. Attention is what you require if you are publishing in the digital age, and that has led to the very idea of attention economy. The amount of attention which people pay to a particular text leads to conversion of that attention into currency, right? So people earn through writing, and that is where the whole economic process of attention economy begins. How much is the particular text, digital text, being circulated in the media today? And that the amount of attention that particular text will receive will then turn into currency or money or whatever you will earn through it. So you will find a lot of writers earning through the Wattpad platform today. You will find a lot of writers whose was published on the Wattpad platform, and then later on it became so popular, it received so much attention that they had to it in the book format also, in the traditional print format also, and then it also led to earning a lot of things there. So you will find a lot of examples of such phenomena happening, and therefore you have the idea of attention economy. Then, however, not all demotic authors require currency, right? Require their particular attention phenomenon to be turned or converting into currency there. Some, for example, fan fiction writers are mostly associated with this idea. They don't require currency as such. They are just writing for their own fun. Like they like for their satisfaction. For the very subjective idea of writing is there when it comes to fan fiction writing. A lot of fan fiction writers are just associated with the idea that okay, we just wrote something regarding the particular phenomenon we are a fan of. So that is their idea. So they don't need currency there. Illusory attention is again a kind of a concept or notion associated with authorship in the digital publishing age. Now, what is this illusory attention? Illusory attention is something which hybrid authors and indie authors use a lot. It's a technique. Now, for example, if I am reading a particular hybrid author regularly, I am acquainted with their work, and I like their writing style. I like their narrative techniques and all those things there. So I keep on commenting on their particular work. I keep on visiting their particular page where they publish their works and so on and so forth. And then they will particularly point me out that you are okay, you are a regular visitor of our site. We appreciate your support. That is, we appreciate the amount of attention you have paid to our particular platform, and therefore they will create content for me. Now, see this. This is illusion. This is not actually wrong, but they will make you feel as if the amount of attention you are paying is leading to something, and they will create content for you. So, for example, if I have commented under a particular story that I like this character a lot, can you develop a story out of that particular character alone? So then they will, if they are very popular and if they are benefiting from my attention, they will create this illusory attention kind of a phenomenon where they will say, okay, yes, sure, we will publish. And then they will, may or may not, publish a story based on my likes and dislikes. Another illusory attention kind of a phenomenon is when like for like phenomenon on IG. That is one again illusory attention phenomenon there, where you ask for a like in exchange for a like. Please like my story. It's really good, and I will like yours. That idea is illusory attention. That is not benefiting you in any case, but it's just that your amount is increasing. The number of likes is increasing, and somewhere you are that might turn into currency someday, and therefore you are asking for an exchange of those things. So that is illusory attention being paid. All those things will lead to the writer who is proposing that kind of an idea of illusory attention benefiting from it. Only they benefit, not us, right? So that is the idea. And again, the idea of the bestseller, that is also associated with the attention economy. A lot of books today have this title of the New York Times bestseller, or this bestseller, that bestseller. Now, that is because a lot of attention has been paid to that particular text, and therefore it has turned into a bestseller suddenly. Initially, the very idea of bestseller was the one book or one text which is very much popular among the readers, which is being published a lot in amounts, and then it becomes a bestseller. But today, you can just find even a fan fiction particular text in traditional print as a bestseller. So that is also because of the attention economy. Because that particular fan fiction page was read a lot, and therefore it was paid a lot of attention, and then somehow they were earning from that. There was currency involved, and then they published it, and now it's a bestseller there. So that is also a very idea of the attention economy which is associated. Now, so what? These are all the just ideas. Where does this lead us? Okay, so the first thing is there is a need to redefine ideas about authorship, readership, and the process of literary production. Right? How are we producing literature today? And how are we understanding authorship? What is the role of the reader here? Right? So, one thing is for sure is that today you no longer have human at the center of the authorship process, right? So you need to redefine literature in such a way that it does justification to that phenomenon also. uh, you also will find that the reader shares a lot of rights when it comes to the creation of a text. So you need to keep in mind that kind of a phenomenon also while you are providing a definition of literature today, right? Because literature is, of course, we define it as holding up a mirror to nature, but then this mirror is doing a lot of things apart from holding it up to nature. It's and there are a lot of things happening in the publishing scenario, in the digital writing context there. So there is a need to redefine everything there. Another important thing which you can conclude from this is the attention economy challenges the notion of literary merit. Now, this you might have question about this a lot. Like, what is the kind of content being produced by the digital platforms? Like, does it have literary value or not? A lot of people say that this kind of literature doesn't have the depth of which a literary text should have. But then, is that literature for us? Like, does literature needs depth to be identified as literature? That is the question. Can't shallow literature be considered literature also? Another important thing is depth the only criteria to check literary merit? That is again a question, right? Like, what do we need? Like, at the end of the day, let's not forget the books which we read today as classics, as literary, having literary depth, were at once considered to be literary shallow texts, right? There was a reason why they were not popular at a particular point of time, or I don't know, doesn't have literary merit at a particular point of time. Now, are we doing the same with e-lit texts or not? That is the question. My observation goes, yes, we are doing it. Like, we are analyzing elit from the lenses of traditional print literature, and that is where the problem lies. And therefore, literary merit, literary value is something we need to reconsider, something we need to again understand, and go through an entire process of analysis once again. Literature as a means of earning, it has always been so. Like, it's not a today contemporary phenomenon. Writers have written for earning money. The literature has been a means of livelihood for a lot of people. Our great person from literature, Shakespeare itself, himself was writing for earning there. So it's not something which you associate purely with digital literature. A lot of people have this challenge to elit also, that you are writing for popularity, you are writing for circulation, you are writing for the attention economy. So that is not good. Literature is not supposed to do so. Like, you are not supposed to earn from literature. But that has been done a lot in the history of literature also. So in a way, this idea needs to be questioned again. And ultimately, there is a scope for research in this field regarding the kind of content which is being published. Where we actually need to focus is this particular place. What is the content being circulated in the popular fiction or the e-lit platforms? What kind of codes are being created for the AI, right? Which content moves into the machine, and how is it working with it? What are the changes being made to literary content because of the AI? All these things are, in a way, spaces where we need to research, and spaces which might lead us to better understanding of literature. And yesterday itself, we were talking about if traditional print literature will just obscure itself from history. No, it won't. The reason is these two things, these two phenomena has to work simultaneously for this particular point, which I have mentioned at the last of so what slide. In order to analyze the content which is there in the e-lit platform, you need to have a background of what was there earlier also. So yeah, so all these things are my observations, and these are my references. The second point here is the book which I mentioned earlier during one of my slides, that is Digital Authorship, Publishing in the Attention Economy. And these are the, if you want to go through types of publishing and types of authorship with the hybrid and the indie publishing phenomenons, you can check these platforms also. So thank you. That's all from my side. You can now ask me questions.
Uh, Rather than a question, is a
Questions will be comment.
Okay.
It will take a long time. So
Okay, sir.
in the comment, the questions are put. Others also can put the questions there, and you answer the questions. In case
Okay,
there are
sir.
counter questions, then also you can keep on putting the comments.
Okay, sir.
Yes, and currently you have to reply some of the questions in the comment, check the comment and the questions, and Vrutti, your time stamp we have still not received. So you rewrite your time stamp. Vrutti, rewrite or you can save do it so I can edit and I can show. Complete that one. Those who are new to the timestamp idea, those who have not ever seen what is timestamp and how it works in the video. So, when we type in the description, I'm sharing the screen, you can see the screen that I'm sharing. You can stand there. You can see on that screen. It's here. Those who are new. So when you are writing description in the YouTube video, you type the time, that is the format is 00 colon 00 colon 00. That is our unit time. That is the format. You can't do anything with the format. The same format you have to take. So then in the text it will become chapters. Yes, you see left panel chapters. So if I want to directly go to this presentation, then I just have to click on that chapter. And then that presentation goes to bigger. So it becomes easy for the watchers, those who are watching videos. In book, we know there are chapters. In book, there are chapters. It is easy for the reader. In videos, also we require chapters, so that people can specifically go to a specific part. So when you also prepare videos, upload your videos, you can think of chapterizing and uploading. So it becomes easy for the people to access. So just by a single click, we can go to a particular video. So that is the advantage of this timestamp that are given. We are waiting for Vrutti's work, so we can complete both the things. I think Vrutti might not have understood how to see the timestamp. So some other time is given there. You don't forget to complete today's work also, by tonight or by tomorrow. Today, so I can also update the thing in the review. Later on, I also want your time to come back to see whether incomplete tasks are still there or not. Okay, next we can start.
is my screen clearly visible there? Very good afternoon, everyone. So, as we know that
we have already won the half, not even if not the half, a part of the success of feminism. And obviously, it's true. But still, uh, there is a kind of coded dependency level which remains there. Uh, be it a strong women or independent, but still a level of dependency still remains there. And for that, I would like to quote Manto's line, and then we'll come up with a presentation. That is, Manto has said, सिगरेट पीने से फेफड़े खराब होते हैं ना, सिगरेट पीने से फेफड़े खराब होते हैं ना, तो सिगरेट पीने से औरत के भी फेफड़े ही खराब होते हैं, किरदार नहीं. सो my today's presentation topic, that is dependency level of independent character, that is Meera in the Gujarati novel Northpole, that is by Jitesh Donga. Before we jump into the critical analysis of the particular character, let me quickly brief you with the outline. There is a boy who is in a quest of searching the work which he loves to do. The way we actually, what is that particular thing we love to do, we don't know, but still we are working, we are studying, and the same routine we are following. But that guy don't want to follow this pisa pita routine, and but he is having that fire in a heart that we are not having, and for that he is trying to find it in a kind of, he gonna mad. He is standing on the highway of Bombay. He is standing there naked and then shouting to the audience, not the audience, but the people, and he is considering them an audience. That the way you are living is a kind of useless, you are supposed to die if you are living in this. So these kind of sort of things are there. And then writer Jitesh Donga introduces us with the character named Meera. She comes there and helps him. She allowed him to stay with her. Then altogether a different story runs there. And what we are supposed to consider in our mind, that we cannot find even a single characteristic which is supposed to be there, or which is a kind of typically womanhood. So she is like, or she is living like hell with all the concerns of the society. She has her own sets of rule, and the idea of living the life, and truly in the sense of living. But still, the way we have discussed, that still the level of dependency remains there when we do a kind of the analysis. So let's jump into the analysis. That first of all, the introduction of the character. Then one of the quite significant thing which we are supposed to keep in our mind while reading the text, that whenever we are introduced or we are informed any sort of thing regarding the character of Gopal, so that is something directly coming from the writer. But when we are informed regarding the character of Meera, actually Meera only is delivering all the information. For example, when Meera introduces herself, then koi fakir jevi befikrai, kafan pehrelu sharir jevi shanti. Now see, it's not actually the piece also. જીજી વિશાથી છલકાતો ચહેરો, મારું નામ મીરા છે, સેક્સી મીરા, ફેન્ટાસ્ટિક મીરા, ગાંડી મીરા, રોતલી મીરા, બિંદાસ્ત મીરા, માસૂમ મીરા, મીરા ધ બીચ, મીરા ધ રોક સ્ટાર, મીરા દીવાની, મીરા મસ્તાની. It's a translation of this slide. Now see, the very words and the way she introduced, we are having a kind of, or the reader comes up with the idea that she is not the girl which is a part of our society, or literally she cannot be a part of. Then how she justifies her way of living, or how she justifies herself. I have quoted the several lines here, that વાદળોની જેમ ધોધમાર વરસવું, થોડુંક ગરજવું તોય ઝંઝાવાતે જીવવું. Now see, directly if we see, she is living the way, she is living her life the way she wanted to live, or she is behaving in particular manner. She has already left her house, but see, she has already accepted toy janjavate જીવવું. Then it comes like the masane જીવવું masane મરવું. So there is a thirst to crave, and the crave like wildfire. Or but again the very second line comes up with a રાખ બનીને ઉઠવું અને રાખ બનીને બેઠા થવું. Now there is a kind of essence of ashes in our mind. It should be there. If you want to live in this kind of structure, or if you just pick out yourself from the particular structure, then you will have to just in this way only. Now there is no any another way out. Now when we say that the independent character, now she don't need anyone, or she is not having a kind of any support, or she is literally living alone in the Bombay. But still there is a kind of in this text this line plays very significant role, that Mari Meera tu che ganda. Now Gopal's friend at the end of the story, when Meera is no more there, Gopal's friend Vijay, he used this word that Mari Meera tu che. Now what is this to be a Meera? And I am using with an article that is that what is this to be a Meera? So isn't it forcing indirectly to all these blend women, or to the women to whom society is addressing them as a slut? But whether it is directly or indirectly, there is a sense of being Meera also. So even if the very strong and the independent women, but still there is something. Of course I won't be a spoiler, but still, so we'll spoil it in the end. But this is something which we can use the word that is of doing gender. And the very question that is why this place is still in a need of women character only. So here we can say that this is what still supporting that one is not born a woman, but rather becomes. Now if we revalue the experience, so these are the several points that girl with a liberal thought, then a cultural background, which obviously plays a part, then her death significance, and all these structures leads us to have an identity crisis. And this is what something which forces us to have, or this is what something signifying the dependency level directly to. For example, if we decenter the text. Now I have kept this slide and the poster of the slide in such a manner, but it's too a symbolic. Then that there are even if we have the independent character, still she performs her role in such a way that directly it seems that she is living the way she wants, but actually there is the damaged psyche which is working from the centuries is still there. And the reason is the representation of women in any literature. It was and it is felt to be one of the most important norms of, or most important form of socialization. So now if we just try to look at that when and how the character of Meera is introduced. So as we already discussed that she was when writer introduced her character, when Gopal was shouting at the highway of Bombay, and she comes up as a savior for Gopal. Now if it leads to us a question that if there is no any kind of need to help, of course it's a modern idea that she comes up in a bullet And it's a if we just read out the description, that a colorful bullet motorcycle was parked a short distance from where the Gopal had fallen. Each part of the bullet was a different color. Now see, symbolically writer tries to give a kind of modernist idea of the girl, that how she might be behaving, that as if the rainbow has been given a shape of a bullet. So a yellow petrol tank had a large picture of a flying angel with color wings spread across the tank, and the black ring of the headlight also had small fiery wings with the painted on it, and then so on. And then uh, again, one more things which is specified to just differentiate the character from the typical norms, and that is there was no design on a green t-shirt, which typically the we are supposed to have in womanhood, that and she wore black jeans and thin saffron leather slippers. So it's not like that she is having all the luxuries, and then she is living her life. Actually, she has nothing. So this is also the thing. And one more thing, uh, but she did not, and how her way of dealing might be. And for that, one more line, that is, but she did not go towards the hard where Gopal was lying. After getting off the bullet, it went straight into the traffic, and then she helped to Gopal. Now the question, and this is the original line taken from the text. Now the question is, was Meera there just to save the Gopal? Now see, if it is not so, writer could have introduced the character of Meera before that also. But we don't have any kind of this idea where writer has given any kind of even idea where we can have this sort of thing. Or if this thing just to save the Gopal, or the character of Meera is there just to save the Gopal, when it comes to save, writer could have done it from the another perspective also. But why that place still remains in the side of women character only? So as we have already discussed, that it actually now uh, represent a kind of upbringing and liberal idea for sure. But this forces us to think that is it really problematic, because it raises now the question of Meera's individual existence also. Now as we know that she allow Gopal to stay with her. Now see, when we use this line, that she allowed Gopal to stay with her in a single room. Now again, it sets a kind of criteria for her, that she might be a girl who is not having any kind of either intellectuality or morality. Otherwise, otherwise, who girl will allow anyone to stay with her? So there also it works. But again, we must say the character of Meera crosses all the boundaries where it pinches readers to think for Meera as a human only rather than a woman. But still, at the end it collapses. So when we and how it collapsed, that when we look at the cultural background of Meera, then we are given introduction for the Meera that as Meera only. We don't have any information regarding the background, and that is the reason, if we do have the background, we cannot have this character also. So he is a girl who sets out to prove herself to the father, that her father has once. We have just these 2-3 lines for as an information, that she cannot survive alone, or she cannot do anything, and she just leave the house and go on to prove the self. Now, again, it raises the question that this quest is forced upon. It was not her willing choice. So, whatever the character which we are saying that an independent character, actually it's independent. No, whatever the things which she is, which are doing by her, actually it's already a kind of forced by the male character, be it a father, what matters. So again, the quest for which she is living, or the way she is living, actually is something that is challenged, and to prove the self she is doing. Now, to living the life is something really to just prove the self only. So, and when it comes to Meera's passion, so she tagged herself, or she addressed herself as a tattoo wali Meera. So she used to do the work of tattoo and earning the money from that and living the life. Now, when it comes to what is that something that is uncommon in the living of Meera that actually distinguishes herself and her life as an uncommon. So there comes a kind of social construction, and it leads towards Meera's identity crisis. For example, at the end of the Gopal and Meera stayed together for 7 years without marriage, and after they had a girl child of they had girl child too, and at the age of 3 or 4, Eid, the girl child was named Eid, get died. Now the story takes and the kind of social construction which works and or comes into a play, that how she herself thinks, or how this social construction works into a mind, that it brings a kind of threaten, and if not threaten, brings a kind of guiltiness in a mind, that even if, see what you have done now, you lived the way you wanted to live, but see the result. Eid died because of the cancer, and there was doctor has informed to both of them that there is a one chance that before years Meera was having the habit of smoking. So there is a chance that it might have affected. It might have affected. It's not the final decision, or it was not the final diagnosis also. But now see how slowly and steadily it damages the psyche. That now, before the years, Meera had already left the house hardly, and with so many efforts she could have set the self and started the living. Now again, and the title of the text, that is Northpole. She dreamed a house, obviously not while sleeping, and she named that house as Northpole. Actually, that house was far away from the city into a jungle, and it was not house that typically which we are living. It's altogether of wooden only. But see now, they encoded this level of what we say, the kind of guilt consciousness is there, that if she could have lived the way others are living, situation might be different. Now, and how it affects the psyche, that is, ગોપાલ મારે કેન્સરથી પીડાતા બાળકોને મદદ કરવી છે. મારે પેલા સૂતા પર રસ્તા સૂતા નગ્ન માણસોને ભણાવવા છે. Now, before she was having the concern that we are not supposed to interfere in anyone's life until and unless the crises are there. Be it right or wrong, but individual needs to have a choice. But now what she thinks, હવે મીરાને મીરાની જરૂર નથી. આ જગતને મીરાની જરૂર છે, which is really expected from any womanhood. You are supposed to be a giver. And ખબર નથી, and again, even if she is making the decision for the society only, still there is a guilt consciousness. Even if there is a sacrifice, compromise, but still, how? મને ખબર નથી પડતી કે હું સાચી દિશામાં જઈ રહી છું કે તને છોડીને ખોટો નિર્ણય લઈ છું. પણ and she decides to leave the North Pole, and she decided that now there is nothing. The thing which I supposed to do, I'll do it now. પણ મને સાચા ખોટાની પડી નથી. મારે બસ થોડો સમય મીરાના વિશ્વને છોડી દેવું છે. And now there comes a time when you leave something for a phase, and any particular character can never be able to achieve it. મારી ખુશી, મારા દુઃખ, મારી લાઈફ, મારી ફરિયાદો ક્યાં સુધી? Now this is what society has already expected, and they wanted from any particular womanhood these things only, that you are supposed to think in this manner only. There comes just one phase or just one thought, and it collapses everything. કારણ કે ઈદને એક પળમાં જતી જોઈને મને થાય છે કે અહીંયા બધું જ આટલું ક્ષણિક છે, તો પછી આ ફરિયાદો શા માટે? ખુશીઓની આવી તડપ શા માટે? Now see how this works. There was a person who was trying to live with the way of their own, but now there is a kind of guilt one cannot survive it. ખુશ કે દુઃખ થવા માટે કારણો નથી જોઈતા, મારે હવે ઘટનાઓ નથી જોઈતી. Now actually the very next moment after this para, it's quite terrible. Of course we should not take it as terrible, because this is what in society which we are surviving from the years. જે આવશે એને દૂરથી ઊભી રહીને સ્વીકારી લઈશ. ગોપાલે આ મીરાને ક્યારેય જોઈ ન હતી. તેના શબ્દો જાણે ગોપાલના પોતાના ગમતા કામની ખોજ, પોતાની ખુશીઓની શોધને ફોગટ બનાવી રહ્યા હતા. Because Gopal still in a search of that work, that which work is there in which he may find a kind of pleasure. And તે કશુંક પામી ચૂકી હોય એવો ભાસ થતો હતો. Now see, whether there is a knowledge or not, now see, we don't know whether this is a kind, whether this is actually knowledge or not. Who knows? And this is the thing where now Gopal has no words, and Gopal lets her go. This place, whether it is problematic, now Gopal justifies the situation in a way that I could not stop her. But there is one incident where Meera has stopped him. So why it is so that she can and why he cannot? And she is living because there is, Meera comes up with a thought that Gopal is also having at least somewhere a kind of thought. It can be just for a second, but what if that whatever the situation are is because of the lifestyle of Meera only? And this pinches to the like anything. And this is a translation of the text. And so here this doing gender, as Lober has discussed in night to his day, that again this doing gender comes up in a play, in our novel, and within just 4 to 5 pages, I might be using the more words, within just 2 pages only, the life which Meera has already lived, independent. There is nothing like independency. Why we can relate this death significance. Now after this very conversation which we discussed, that I want to leave and the things are there, then it comes to that significance. So Meera just look at her dream house, then look at the board of Northpole, and walks away towards the highway. And again we have dialogues of Gopal that જે માણસને આટલા વર્ષો સુધી ચાહેલું હતું એ માણસ જઈ રહ્યું હતું, હમણાં જ છાતીમાંથી જીવ નીકળી જશે એવી વેદના ગોપાલની અંદર થઈ રહી હતી. Now see, there is nothing kind of having relation with Vedna. There needs to come into a play. So, and again, how the narration works, Meera પાછું ફરીને જોઈ રહી ન હતી. Now see, there is already a pain there, yeah. But we are having a kind of the blaming. Meera પાછું વળીને જોતી નથી. She is not supposed to be also. But and we can relate and to understand this that significance, case is made the very interesting observation from Simone de Beauvoir's Freedom and the Scandal of Death, and that is both freedom and death are central aspect for Simone de Beauvoir in a philosophy, fiction, and memoir. We can only give meaning to a life by constructing our own set of values and continually reassessing them. There is a third possibility of freedom and oppression, bad faith. Simone de Beauvoir argues that although our genuine reality is to be free, sometimes we do not affirm or will our freedom. Bad faith is choosing not to will ourselves free. If we are shown or aware of how to be free but do not take up that freedom, it is actually a moral fault. One example of bad faith would be pretending that in Western society women have no option other than marriage. So, and then the very next moment, and we must tag it this event that is a kind of terrible. Of course, after the end there comes a truck and Meera truck run over through the body of Meera, and within a second Meera is no more now. But after just 5 to 7 seconds of Meera, 7 seconds after the death of Meera, Gopal comes a kind of enlightenment, and he reminds one of the sentence of Meera. Of course, he also gonna mad for a while now, that there is nothing in his world also, and the scenario is there, that how will he survive, and then like a mad one, he sits into a room. There is raining outside, and he's in one of the conversation they decided that on the both will sing on the death of anybody. They will not cry. So the way because why, and the reason is they have actually lived. And here Gopal starts singing. This is the moment Gopal comes to know this was the only thing I searched for these many years. I love to sing. Now see, slowly and steadily, this leads to happy ending. That Gopal, of course, pain is there, but what matters? Then, so now the another again question, that if Meera hadn't died, Gopal would never have known his favorite work. Is it right or not? And if it is so, then again, does this not suppose that women have been and will continue to be victimized in the development of man only? And this way, this Meera death becomes a symbol of dying being within a woman only. So there is nothing which she had lived individually. Perhaps all these things were illusionary, and she proved that. So these are the lines that truck Meera ની નજીક પહોંચ્યો અને બીજી ક્ષણે, and there is nothing now. So social construction forces Meera emotionally to be a common woman, and there is no need to say they are directly dependent only. That, and again there we can put this, that Meera lacked a logic and logic, that whether or not she had herself responsible for the its death did not, and whether even if she is the responsible, it now it cannot make any kind of change. The way Gopal has accepted, she could have, but she cannot. And the lack of logic in itself, now we are supposed to use this word only, that the lack of logic in itself proves that the mediocrity which forces Meera to think with the thought of a normal woman. When we look at the same thing from the Gopal side, the complete opposite side comes to the eye. The same scenario, but reacts in complete different way. Otherwise, before that, the altogether intellectual, mature decisions, those who are which are coming from the Meera side. But when it comes to the kind of peak level, again it the goes the way it is going, and this is the reason we can use the word that Meera fails to sustain Gopal's true passion to live at any cost, under any tradition, and by any means. So this is the reason that Meera leaves everything twice, but where to go? Now, if we just think, what if Meera had not died? But where she can go? So this is the only way. Even if she could have lived, there is no way outside. So she has to die. So again, it raises a question: if you really be independent and liberal, is the death is only the way? Because in society there is no any structure. So these are the things which, directly or indirectly, we must do now. After the analysis, we must use the word directly. This scenario and the way of how she, even if she is represented as a modern and the liberal, the intellectual, strong women, but there is encoded encoded dependency level, or which is the psychic damage is still there, and we never know up till when it might be there. So these are the references, and thank you, friends. If you have any question, I am open to it.
Yes, the questions are in the comment, so you can read the questions and reply in the comment. Okay, so next one now.
Is my presentation visible?
Yes, you can start.
Very good evening to everyone. Today, uh, I will be presenting on the topic Poetic Works of John Donne and Rabindranath Tagore, and my name is Smita Gadhvi. If you could see in this particular slide, it is showing pictures of both the important metaphysical poets. So, what are we covering today in this particular presentation? First of all, there is a relationship of these two poets that they depict because both belong to different time span. John Donne was during the time span, as you can see from the slide, near to the 17th century, and Rabindranath Tagore belongs to the 19th century. But there is an influence that we see in the works of Rabindranath Tagore. Many of such works, there is one more important poetry, Shesh Kobita, that is end of poetry. That is a very important work where he talks about different elements as John Donne did in the 17th century. Apart from that, there is also a British metaphysical poetry's influence that we see on many important writers, not only Rabindranath Tagore. There are many important personalities where we see the impact of European literature. So, where are these impacts felt? It is mainly in the form, in the theme, and in the philosophy of poetry. If we could see, there are many important things, but before that, we need to understand where and in which part of the work. So, there is a very important poetry of John Donne that he has written on the topic, the name is Sun Rising. As you can see, sun and it is rising. So there is a beautiful sunrise that all of us in the morning get up and admire. Apart from that, it also shares a message and it inspires also to all of us. So, sun, which shares a message and it also inspires even us. So, in the 17th century, how would you think John Donne would have, admired it? Now, there is a different part of metaphysical poets, as I mentioned in the first slide, that, metaphysical poets that we know, where did this term come from? There was, Drummond was the first person who used it, coined it, and later on we find the reference first cited by John Dryden in his works where we see the reference of metaphysical poets. So, who are these metaphysical poets? These metaphysical poets talk about different elements of nature with imagination, but with a lot of wit, conceit, and a lot of humor that we can't even visualize, or we would not dare to cite. Such is this poetry, about sun rising. If you could see the poetry, in this particular slide where he is referring to sun as busy old fool. Now, in the 17th century, when people were worshipping God, sun, he's also said, God of war, the Lord Apollo. These are the references of sun. And here we have John Donne very differently citing about sun as you busy old fool, unruly son. Now, this is what he quotes to. As if son would be a child, might be he is a pet that has misbehaved, and John Donne is scolding son that why are you behaving in this manner? You've become old fool and you are unruly, you are saucy, pedantic, wretched, cochit. So here we are seeing the references and emotions of he is talking about sun in reference to sun with a lot of emotions as if he's a very sun is a very common element in our literature, and we see it around as a very common element and a part of our life. Now, during the time of 17th century, the Elizabethan time, the poetries that were cited were very boring, had gone boring. people were sick of reading the same type of themes of poetry, where the element of love, was presented as courtly love, or might be an ideal love, or something where we find a gap and we can't reach to that love. Now, here's where we are having John Donne, who uses in the opening line, busy old fool, and unruly son. So, son is kind of romanticizing with the beloved, and son is coming in between, and this is how he gives reference to it. So, John Donne was known for this kind of critical, judgmental aspects where, apart from being a very important English poet, he was also a good lawyer. So he was very judgmental, very argumentative in terms of, logical reasoning of why he has a reason to say so. So here he talks about son, and he is saying in these line that, where thou dost thou thus, why are you doing this? Now what is son doing here? Son is peeping out of window through the curtains and calling on us. So he's saying, what is this kind of a gesture you're doing, adopting? You are looking from the windows, you are entering our room in terms of the peeping from also windows and curtains, and you're disturbing a love making process. And is this mannerism, is this etiquettes? This is what he says. Now, the language that we are, might be smiling or enjoying, in 17th century, he was criticized for this kind of work by Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson had, once said that John Donne is not keeping a very good accent and keeps, a hanging, a falling flow towards the poetry. But this is the particular style for which John Donne actually got very popular, even today. This is a poetry which was published after his death. Now, that also talks about he was not given due credit when he was alive in terms of importance of this, commendable work that we are enjoying today in this presentation. So he says, you are saucy, pedantic, wretched. Now, why does he say so? Because sun is disturbing their process, their your moment, and it is interfering in between. And he says that, son, you have no work to do. Now, let me reduce your work a bit because you are going around and around. So, don't come near to us. That would reduce your task of some kind of work that you do on a scheduled basis. Rather, where should you go? Now, he refers in this poetry that you should rather go to the kingsmen, the drivers of the king's cart. Go there. Might be the king needs to ride to the palace. Go to the schoolboys. Go to the farmers. They have important works for morning where they need to reach a particular time, where you need to awake them. But here you don't need to disturb us. Rather, he is also quoting to, the love he has for his beloved in terms of, don't be, too much prejudiced by your race. My beloved has more condense, than you have. She has more radiance than you have. But another reference that he also, talks about the love that is alike to no seasons, knows nor chime. Now he's here talking about hours, no days, months, which are, rags of times. Now here, why does he give this kind of a reference? I've just cited a part of it and important portions which I want to discuss here in my presentation. Now here he's saying that son shouldn't be too much proud and arrogant about the power that he has. He's saying that my beloved has more radiance than you, and one eclipse can change this power that you enjoy. If there is an eclipse, you would no longer be visible. So that moment your power will be diminished. And apart from that, he's also saying that I would not do it. So why he's saying I would not do it? He's saying I would not do it because one moment also I don't want to blink my eye and be away from my beloved. That importance she has in my life. And he also refers to, in this poetry, if you could see, that there are two, three lines that I've separately with the bullet point cited, that whether both the Indias of spices and mine. Now, this particular line that is there in the poetry, not all of it I have taken, is there in the poetry, also talks about how learned the metaphysical poets were during that time. He's referring to minerals, he's talking about land of India, what it is famous for, and he's asking son to visit all the different distant land. That means that metaphysical poets were well known for their learning, and that is how John Donne also is sharing his learning through the poetry with the element of nature in an eco-critical aspect. If we see it, he's talking about sun as a very common element which is a part of our life. But usually this kind of poetry in the today's scenario is very rare. People going back to the time to read this kind of a poetry in terms of bringing freshness to their life. But it is not having a depth. In this poetry, we see that depth. There is yet another line that says, "This bed thy center is." Now, in the poetry, he says this, the bed that we have as a center is the main important part of my life. This is the main scenario for which I live. And there is my beloved who loves me with all her heart. And when she loves me, I love her back. And I am her prince. And because of this kind of emotion, we are in a center of something, and you are irritating and disturbing the center moment of our love. And this is what, in the third part, you see, she's all states, she's there for me, and all princes means I. He's saying that I am the prince, and there is nothing else that matters to me or my life. Now, this kind of poetry brings us think, ponder that this time period of 17th century, when gods, as you know, the Lord Apollo is worshipped, we are having a interesting poetry by John Donne, where he is mocking on sun, and he is, talking as a very common element, that he is like a child and he's scolding the sun. Now, this kind of essence is what is of metaphysical poets, and that is what brings us understand that what are the wits, what are the conceits that he's using, how logical his arguments are in terms of favor of, statements that he's putting towards the sun. He's continuously in dialogue with the sun, and we are wondering what are the words that he's referring to the sun. You are saucy, pedantic, wretched, why he says so? Because the sun has no manners. It is continuously peeping into the room, and he's getting disturbed by this gesture. There is yet another poetry that I would like to discuss, but before that, who has written this poetry? This poetry is written by Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate. Now, this poetry is talking about a 19th century time period. The poetry is there, but then there are important pictures that I've also brought in about, there is a paper boat that usually children in the streets we see when it rain falls, then the water is puddled, and small children have no other expensive toy, so a very easy to make toy with the paper they are playing, and that must be an inspiration for Rabindranath Tagore also. He was born in Bengal, and there are different elements in this poetry, as Shuli flower. There's a picture I've taken that is also cited in this particular poetry. There is boats, there are, clouds. Now, why did I discuss all these important areas in the poetry where I'm seeing these elements of nature? Because I want to also say that there is a huge connection of metaphysical poetries in different time span, even though both belong to a different background. Yet we see the references and the influences of nature, as John Donne did during 17th century, kind of connected in the 19th century. Now, day by day, I float my paper boats one by one down the running stream. Why is this kind of a poetry might be taken by Rabindranath Tagore? Because he believes in connecting and unifying part of the nature, because nature is what completes us. if we have sentiments, if you can see there is a rainfall, what would be the immediate sentiment that would come to your mind? Might be I would get rain, wet in the rain, and enjoy the chillness of it, or how is the droplets falling on my skin, bare skin. And here he is talking about this paper boat which would be sailed by whom? The child. So in this poetry also there is a very innocent and a young child that he talks about, and he says that this boy is floating paper boats in the running stream of the water, and he believes that this particular boat will reach a particular destination. Now, why these boats were sent is also a question. So, these boats were sent by this boy with a hope, with a temperament of mind, with a message that what I want to convey would reach to the other end. Now, what does the child want to convey? Let us see. In big black letters, I write my name on them and the name of the village where I live. Means he's sending a proper address. Where is this reaching from? The address of my, acknowledgement. You should acknowledge when you get my message. I hope that someone in strange land will find them and know who I am. I load my little boats with shoely flowers from our garden and hope that these bloom of the blooms of the dawn will be carried safely to the land in night. Because shuli flower is a very important segment in Bengal. uh, these are very fragrant oriented flowers which bloom at night, and in the early morning it is it is closed at night, and early morning it blooms and it shares the fragrance. So if you want to pick it, you have to have a particular timing to find this flower. So it will bloom as it will reach early part of the morning. The boat carries those shuli flowers along with the message that he has to the other part. And by the time it reaches there, it would bloom to totality. So that talks also about how sensitive we are about which flower is named by what name, the biological name. Are we aware of one or two species also in today's world? We are not. Now, as a part of eco-critical poetry, Paper Boat is one of the poetries that I've taken to also depict that how we think in today's scenario. Do we have those kind of elements that were there in the 19th century? How are the rapid changes bringing so much of innocence that is dying out by the materialistic and the digitalized world? There is no harm in being digital. There's no harm in being a little bit materialistic till it is helping. But if it is damaging what we have around, the innocence that we see in this child, hardly we see this innocence left in the digitalized world where the people are so, to the point to complete what they have in mind and finish and forget about things. Now, here he's talking about a boy who is playing with playmates. I know not what playmate of mine you, there is no playmate of mine, so you are my playmate. I'm playing with you in the sky and sends them down the air to race with my boats. Now there are certain amount of clouds, as you can see in this picture, and he believes that the boat is racing with this kind of clouds, and they are bulging up in shape and sizes, and it would disturb the message that I want to give. But yet he has a belief that it would not be disrupted. Now here is where Rabindranath Tagore is trying to talk about humanism, the life that humanism, the nature teaches us humanism, the human values, that it would not be disturbed as life is. Life also teaches us many struggles. There are many challenges that we face, but actually, it is a blessing in disguise. It teaches us many things. So, similarly, there is a hope in the mind of this child who thinks that he's doing an extraordinary task by sending flowers in a small paper boat. It is made of paper, and in the water, might be it would be diluted, but he has a hope, a spirit, that a zeal to raise it up, and he's competing with the clouds up in the sky, and he's saying that it would reach, yet it would compete with these clouds. When night comes, I bury my face in my arm and dream that my paper boat floats on and under the midnight stars. These are references where he's thinking, imagining that might be when I sleep, I go to sleep, that time when the midnight stars appear in beautiful the light of the stars, my boat would have reached somewhere a good destination that I calculate. And the fairies of sleep are sailing in them. There are fairies around in this and sailing along and lading in their basket full of dreams. So they are also, pouring the basket of dreams along in this particular boat. If you could see this particular image, it is talking about exactly how is this boat loaded, how is the child imagining, and how are these clouds kind of dancing on the sky. And there are numerous things that are floating in this river, but this boat is glamorized and shown more with a bigger size. I've scaled it, this kind of image, because I wanted to show the importance it has in the mind of a child. So, why this kind of poetry was chosen by me? The reason why I have chosen this poetry, because it brings along lot many elements of nature, where we see nature as a very important part and ingredient of life, whether it is in the poetry of John Donne or in Rabindranath Tagore's poetry. Both these poetry, if we compare, we will find there are different themes in it. In this, there would be the innocence of the child. Apart from that, there are different elements that he refers of nature, of the significance of how sensitive is the child about those flowers when it blooms, the midnight stars when it would reach a particular destination, clouds, how are they racing and competing with the boats. Similarly, if we compare the same things with John Donne's poetry, when he was talking about sun rising, nobody during that time period had used this kind of a language for sun, who was worshipped, which was worshipped. So in poetry of John Donne, we are seeing also sun. Now, what is the similar part of both of them is there is a macro cosmos, a very important element, sun. It's so grand, it's so huge. But in the poetry of John Donne, we are seeing it minimize to as if it is a very common element of my life. It is someone like a kid or like a pet who misbehaved and John Donne scolded it. Now there are references of also clouds, rivers, important mountains, as you can see in the pictures, where the child is traveling in the childhood, and they are one with the child, this child, and they are like playmates. The child has no playmates. He's imagining and in one with this particular entity of nature, and he thinks them as a very important part of their life, and he is doing many things to send in messages to the distant cloud that I'm this person in this village, and I would like to convey my message to you. What is the message is very secret and private, so might be it is not shared, but then children have different secrets. So there is a very innocent part with the beauty of the river, the clouds, and these flowers that we see in this picture that talk about how important Rabindranath Tagore during that time thought of children who would be imaginative and something as a creative expression to how do they see the world around them, the world which is complete with nature and it has different elements in it. Now, in eco-criticism as a literature, these kind of poetries draw our attention to evidences of nature, which is a very important part and which is kind of disturbed, diminished. Now, this kind of river we don't see in a present scenario in the modern world. Might be it is filled with a lot of pollutants. It is having chemicals in it, and children are asked not to go nearby it. John Donne is talking about sun. Now, when we go out, most of the children are protected from the sun. They are enclosed in AC classrooms, AC bus, AC homes, AC shopping malls. Hardly they see and understand what is sun as an element. And they would not relate to it as John Donne does. So he gives a lot of important, evidences of how the nature is kind of going away from our life, and it is also reflected in many kind of present works where poetry it is not showing this kind of connectiveness, bondness with nature. It is slowly, steadily kind of diminishing. So what can we do? We can read this kind of poetries and might be inspired of it, or where is this world leading us to, and do some precautionary steps, change our attitudes, our behavior, take proper measures in terms of controlling it, curbing it, do something about it, contribute it, right, towards this kind of better world which was imagined in the 17th and the 19th century. That was it from my end. You can type in the questions if you have any. It would be shortly answered by me. Thank you so much.
Okay, next one now. Get ready.
Can you see my slide? Okay. Very good afternoon to all. Myself, Surbhi Goswami, and today I'm going to present the presentation over the spatial area of the research. And the topic of my presentation is the crisis of identity in the era of globalization, a study of Kiran Desai's The Inheritance of Loss. Now, first of all, let us start with the globalization. That globalization is the dynamic root which is influencing and challenging the traditional culture, the traditional values, and the family structure, and also the lifestyle of the people. Now, globalization is increasing the human interaction through the nation states, and according to that, it is influencing the cultural identity of the people. When we are talking about the identity of the people, at that time we can say that identity of the people is very crucial. Identity is the one by which you are known to the other people. So when it comes to the crisis of the identity, at that time the people are very much concerned about that. Now, when we are talking about the globalization, at that time you can say that globalization is spreading the Western ideologies, and according to that, it is having the domination over the third world countries. Say, for example, the South Asian countries. Now, globalization is exhibited in the glittering multicultural situation, and according to that, it is affecting the identity of the people who are coming from the third world countries. Not only that, but they are also questioning their own identity. They are accepting the others' identity. They are also at the same time questioning
their own identity. That is what the crisis that we can see in the novel written by Kiran Desai. Now, when we are talking about the novel written by Kiran Desai, at that time you will see the problems of multiculturalism, you will see the problems of hybridity, you will see the problem of nation and the nationality, or we can say the transcultural identity the people are having. There's all the questions we will see in the novel. And when we are talking about the globalization, at that time we can say that globalization is the instrument in the hand of the Western people. And according to that, they are setting the codes and the symbols for the other people. Say, for example, when we are talking about the white color, at that time they are setting the code and the norms and the symbol that white is the color of the beauty, or white is, we can say, the symbol of beauty. On the contrary, when we are talking about the black or the dark, now black and the dark is something which is not having the beauty, or which is contrary to the concept of the beauty, and which is indicating the ugliness. Now, that is what the set codes and norms by the other people, by the Western ideologies, and according to that, the people are driven of the South Asian countries. Now, why they are doing that? Now they are having their multinational companies, right? They have to produce they have to sell their products. Say, for example, they are selling many beauty products, many skin care products, and according to that, they are having the economic growth. According to that, the money is going to their nation. Now that is what the main concern of that particular nation. And according to that, you can say that first of all, they are spreading those kinds of norms and codes with the help of the media, with the help of new technologies, and after that they are having the economic growth. Now that is what we can say the main idea of those people. Now, when we will see the novel written by Kiran Desai, now the setting of the novel, which is there of 1980, and the novel is published in 2006. Now, when we talk about the novel written by Kiran Desai, at that time you will see many problems faced by the characters of the novel. So, for example, people are facing the crisis of the identity. They are facing the problem which is rootlessness. They are coming back to their homeland. At the same time, they are facing the crisis of the nation and the nationality. At the same time, they are facing the question of the nation, or we can say the multicultural identities. Now these all are the questions, these all are the problems which are main concern of the writer, which is written by Kiran Desai. Now there are many characters in this particular novel, and when we are talking about the characters are facing several kinds of crisis in the novel. Say, for example, first is the character that is Jamubai Patel. Now Jamubai Patel is the judge. Now he is from India. Now he went to the England for having a study. He was a well-educated person. He got the education in England, and just because of that, he was, we can say, believing in Western culture blindly. He was following the Western culture blindly. Now he is having the Western attire. He is having the white powder over the dark skin. Now that is what the symbol of multiculturalism, or we can say the hybridity, you can see in the character of Jamubai Patel, that is the judge. Now he was taking the afternoon tea, right, to identify himself as he is the European person. He is the person who is coming from the Britain. Now that is what his main idea. Now, when we are talking about the marriage values of our own culture, of our Indian society, at that time we can say that our marriage values are somehow broken just because of the hybridity, just because of the crisis of the identity. Say, for example, Jamubai Patel. For Jamubai Patel, white is the symbol of European country. White is the symbol of the modern country. Now, he himself does not accept his wife, and that is the end of the relationship. That is the end of the marriage, just because of the relation, just because of the identity, and just because of the mindset the Jamubai Patel judge is having. So there is always a marriage crisis we can see here in this novel. And when we are talking about the Jamubai Patel, Now, when he came to India, or when he is in India, now he himself was not accepted by his own people. Why? Because he was considered as the person who is having the British identity, and just because of that, he himself was not accepted by his own people. At the same time, Jamubhai Patel is also not able to accept the Indian culture. Now, here you can see the in betweenness, right? You can see that the rootlessness, you can see that here the person is between two culture, the culture of the other country and the culture of his own. So somehow they are having the in betweenness in the culture. Say, for example, they are also alienated. They are having the alienation in their character. That is also one a trait that you can see in the character of Jamubhai Patel. Now, here is the first sentence you can read, that his face seemed distanced by what looked like white powder over dark skin. Now, he is mimicking the other culture in such a way that somehow it is not very valuable, or somehow it is mimicry only. And when we are talking about his character at the time, you can say that he was following the British culture blindly. Now, when we are talking about the mindset of Jamubhai Patel, at the same time, the mindset of the Jamubhai Patel is also completely British, completely European. And here it is written at the end of the slide that mimicry of the center, as Ashcroft claims, is the periphery to immerse themselves in the imported culture, denying their origins in attempt to become more English than the English, right? They are becoming more English than the English when they are mimicking other people, other culture. At that time, there is a kind of, we can say, the laughter is we can say going on in the life of the Jamubhai Patel, and they are mimicking the other culture in such a way that they are not accepted by any state or any nation. Now, Jamubhai Patel is trying to speak in English, which is having the English accent. For example, when we are talking about our Indian English, at that time we are speaking Indian English the way we are speaking Gujarati, right? So, why? Because we have accepted English as the language, which is our own language. But Jamubhai Patel is trying to have the accent of English, which is British accent, right? So that is how also you can say that he's having his main problem with that, and just because of that, his identity is very questionable. So that is the crisis of identity that you can see in the character of Jamubhai Patel. Other is the Baiju. Now, Baiju is another central character of the novel that we can see here. Now, Baiju is the young man, and he is the son of the chef. Now, chef is working in the home of Jamubhai Patel, and he's having that great American dream, right? Now, he wants to be Americanized. Now, that is what the great dream of Baiju that you can see here. Now, he efforts well, he tried well to get assimilate into the culture of the Western people. He was trying to adapt all the ways of living. Those are there in the Western country. So, for example, when Baiju is there in America, he went there to purchase the T-shirt which is showing that I love America, or I love New York, or born in the USA. In that way, he's trying to adapt all the ways of living those that are there in the America. But at the same time, he was not exploited. He was drifting from job to job, and when he was there in America, at that time he was exploited by other people. He was exploited by the employers. So his experience of the work, that is also very devastating. Say, for example, yesterday we were talking about the NRIs. So NRI are coming from other countries. When they are coming here, at that time they are showing us very gaudy things, right? At that time they are not talking about the problems, the crisis that they are facing there. When all the people are going to another country, another nation, say for example America, now only few people, those are there who are getting the sufficient, or we can say the proper position in another culture, but all the people are not getting the same position, same value in another country. So that is how they are not coming here, and they are not talking about the real crisis faced by the NRI in another country. Now, at present, we are having many cases. Say, for example, many of the people are killed in America. Many of the people are also slaughtered in America. So that is how those are the crises that you can see here in our real world as well. Now, when he was working there, he was slipping out. He was facing racism as well. He was not accepted by any other person in America except the black person, his own colleague, that is the Muslim man. He was only accepted by him. So that is how the question of the identity that Baiju is having, that is also very, we can say, pertinent question that we are having here. And at the end of the novel, he also came back to India. And at the end of the novel, he also came to the root. Now, that kind of rootlessness you can see here in this novel. Now, another character, those are there in the novel, that is Sai and Gnan. Now, Sai is the granddaughter of Jamubai Patel, the judge, and Gnan is the tutor of Sai. Now, when we are talking about the relationship between Gnan and Sai, now Gnan and Sai, they are in relationship. And when we are talking about their relationship at that time also, that is very problematic. Say, for example, Sai is very much blind towards the Western attire, towards the Western way of living and the Western idealism. But on the contrary, we are having the Gnan. Now, Gnan is not appreciating the way of living of the Sai. Say, for example, when Sai says that you should eat something with the help of the knife and the fork, or the table manners which are there in Sai, now that is not accepted by Gnan. Gnan is very much, we can say, having a kind of anger towards that. And when Sai was teaching those norms and those, we can say, the manners to the Gnan, at that time, Gnan was very much reluctant not to have those kind of manners in his character. So that is how there is always a threat to the relationship when we are talking about the relationship. Now, Sai lost his love just because of her blind love towards Western culture, towards the Western idealism. That is what we can say, the question that you can see in the character of Sai and the Gnan. Now, some of the main problems that you can see in the characters from the novel, that is the inheritance of loss, that is the in-betweenness, cultural clash, alienation, displacement, sense of loss, multiculturalism, caste system of India, hybridity, insurgency, racial discrimination, identity crisis. Now, these are the main problems faced by the characters of the novel, and that is the real, we can say, the crisis, real problem faced by the people, those who are living in third world countries. Now, globalization came with the ideas that you can go anywhere, you can settle anywhere, and you can have the better prospects. But bitter were the experiences, right? That is what the main aspects, or we can say the main focus of the novel that you can see here. Now, when Jamubai Patel was eating chapati, he was eating chapati with knife and fork. Now, that is also the hybridity that you can see in the characters of the novel. Now, Kiran Desai has explored the fondness of foreign culture and the foreign language. Say, for example, there are two other minor characters in the novel, and that is Lola and Noni. Now, Lola and Noni, they are basically from India. Their basic, or we can say their real names are Lolita and Nonita. But instead of that, they transfer their name to Lola and Noni. Now, that is also the effect of the, we can say, the modern society that you can see on the characters. That is also prevalent here. And they are having a pride when they are connected with the foreign firms like BBC. Right? So they are having also pride, or we can say they are also fond of reading the English novel in that particular century. Now, Jamubai Patel is also very reluctant to send to the public school, to send Sai to the public school. Why? Because Jamubai Patel thinks that if Sai will go to the public school, she will learn the Indian accent and instead of English accent. So just because of that, Jamubai Patel is having a kind of fear that Sai should be learned, we can say science should learn, which is having the English manners, English language, and not the typical Indian system and the Indian language. And at the same time, when the characters are using English language, they are using English language with a British accent. Say, for example, if one character is saying to another character, say, for example, get out of my way. Now, he is telling in British accent. Why? Because to dominate that person, because that person is not knowing the English language or not having the British accent. Now, these are some of the, we can say, ideas that I have found in the novel, that is the victim of glamour of the West outwardly and gloomy inside. Now, when we are talking about the characters of the novel at that time, you can see that they are outwardly, they are very happy with their Western idealism and Western culture. But inside that, they are very gloomy. Say, for example, when we are talking about the character that is Jamubai Patel. Now, Jamubai Patel is trying to adapt the Western culture. He is completely Westerner. But at the same time, he is believing in caste system. Right, so that is what we can say, the in-betweenness that you can see in the character of Jamubai. At the same time, say for example, there is the another character that is the Baiju. Now, when we are talking about that character, now he is in America. He's trying to adapt that culture very blindly. At the same time, when some person, some Indian is trying to, or he is ordering for the beef, at the same time he is very much, we can say, having a surprise that why the person is ordering for the beef. Now, that is not what the culture of our own. So that is how they are somewhere in between. Say for example, Sai. Now, Sai is the character who is believing in Western ideologies. At the same time, Sai is also loving the person Gnan, and Gnan is completely the traditional person. So that kind of, we can say, in-betweenness or duality of the characters that you can see in the novel. When we are talking about the America, now America is known as the salad bowl, right? But at present, when we are talking about, Edward says, Orientalism. Now, when they are talking about the Orient and the Occident, so at the same time, they are, or we can say that the Occident people are looking towards the Orient as somehow downtrodden or backward or uncivilized person. So that is what the way of representing the other people, and that is also very prevailing. Now, brands of the other company or brands of the multinational company, that also you can see here that people are very, we can say, reluctantly using those names. For example, when we talk about the characters in the novel, at that time, there is the, we can say, a dialogue between Sai and Gnan. Now, Gnan is very shameful, or Gnan is feeling some kind of feeling that I'm not talking in the right way. Say, for example, when we are talking about Sai, now Sai is taking the names of the brand like Sunsilk or Lux, and very happily she is taking the name of those brands. But when we are talking about the Gnan, now there is one soap, and that is the homemade soap by mother of the Gnan. Now, when he was talking about that soap, he was not comfortable to talk about that soap in front of the sign. So that is what the clash of the culture that you can see in the characters of the novel. Say, for example, it looks so shiny, I thought you might. No, it looks very soft, he observed. Do you wash it with shampoo? Yes. What kind? Sunsilk or soap? Lux, what soap? Lux, beauty bar of the film star, but they were too scared to laugh. More silence. He couldn't admit that his mother bought the homemade brown soap that was sold in large rectangles in the market blocks, sliced off and sold cheap. Right? So when we are talking about our cottage industry, or when we are talking about the cheap products which are there in our market, so when we are talking about that, at the same time we are having a kind of shame in conversation of those matters. So that is what the crisis of the identity I have seen in the novel written by Kiran Desai, that is the inheritance of loss. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll have questions in comment. Check the comments and give your answers to the questions which are raised by other participants.
Is it visible? Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Today, I want to talk about the topic called the locus of ambivalence in Arvind Adiga's Last Man in Tower, which speaks about the ambivalence, the idea of ambivalence, and what prompts ambivalence in society. So these are the some books which I have gone through, and particularly I want to discuss this major work, Last Man in Tower. Ultimately, somehow we find almost each characters of these novels written by Arvind Adiga. Somehow these characters are feeling ambivalence somewhere in the point or in the society where they represent. This is the table of contents, introduction that will be of Last Man in Tower, then definition of ambivalence, what is ambivalence, the locus of ambivalence in the novel Last Man in Tower, that at what point there are these examples which we can cite with the help of this book Last Man in Tower, what prompts the ambivalence, conclusion and references. So if we look at the introduction, so in a story, what happens if we talk about the Last Man in Tower? So Last Man in Tower by Arvind Adiga, which is published in 2011. Adiga documents the rivalry of two men who are interested in owning the same plate in Mumbai. So normally, there are these are two major characters. We can say antagonist and protagonist. Though Arvind Adiga himself, when he's giving interview to some of these journalists, is clearly saying that there is no antagonist or protagonist in this novel. Mumbai itself is the whether we can say protagonist or antagonist. So the story is about this two person, the character, which is Dharmen Shah, who is this owner of this flat so-called Vishram Society, Tower A. That is what they are mentioning. And then there is this retired teacher whose name is Yogesh Murthy, and is called as a Masterji, as he is a teacher. So there is this a fight going on between this Dharmen Shah and Yogesh Murthy, who is a teacher. Ultimately, this Dharmen Shah is coming with the idea that he wants to buy this Tower A, that is the building, and he wants to shift all these residents to somewhere else. And he's offering lots of money to all the residents who are living there. Initially, these residents, they have this some kind of fear that what if they are not going to get this amount of money. So they have this doubt. But slowly and steadily, this Dharmen Shah is able to convince those residents. And then what happened? That those of this community, the group who is living together with this teacher himself. So now they have this gap. They have this communication gap. They have this cultural gap. So this gap is now clearly visible. And that is why these people are now want Masterji also to accept this amount of money and have to accept whatever this Dharmen Shah is telling to him. The novel is neighbor turn against neighbor as their determination to secure the flat, each of his own purposes, causes them to participate in increasingly dastardly schemes. The novel revolves around the theme of greed and how it has the power to drive us to the things of which we never dreamed we were capable. So at the end, what happens? These neighbors, they attacks on this Masterji, that is Yogesh Murthy, and then it is rather a murder. But at the end, a newspaper says, or rather we can say, the person who is reporting, he says that it is a suicide, that this Masterji is not able to cope up with this so-called contemporary time, is not able to see the benefit of larger community, because what we see is that residents have never thought of such amounts in whole their livelihood. So they are seeing that it is a large amount of money which they can never get in this whole life. And that is why some of them think that this Masterji is becoming narcissist. So there is this clear idea of ambivalence, whether this Dharmen Shah, whether these minor characters, and whether this Masterji, are they right or wrong? That is what the quest which Adiga is trying to show in this novel. So if we look at the definition of ambivalence, the originally a psychological term borrowed from the German word ambivalence. That is from where this ambivalence term is came. And then there is this, it is coined in 1910 by the Swiss psychologist Eugene Bleuler. So he is the person who first used this term ambivalence, and then it came into this literary concept. If we look at this definition as per this Cambridge dictionary, that is how they are mentioning the state of having two opposing feeling at the same time, or being uncertain about how you feel. So it is about feeling, whether you see this certain ideologies is helpful to you, or it is not helpful to the person. So there is this constant inter turmoil in a person, whether he should or she should go with certain feeling or thought. Then, as per this Merriam-Webster, the simultaneous and contradictory attitudes or feeling, such as attraction and repulsion toward an object, person, or action. So we can see, as we have seen this introduction. So these residents, somehow they are attracted towards this so-called idea of capitalism. They want this capital. Capital here refers to this money. They want to live in this luxurious life. It gives them historical reference as well, like there is this skyscrapers in and around which are building these buildings which are considered as a skyscraper. So they have this desire to live there. But at the end, what happens with those residents when they have this guilt, because to reach at that level they had to kill this Masterji, has been helping to them since long. Then this definition comes with the idea of Homi ke Baba, who is referring from this post-colonial angle, that the mixture of charm and revulsion in the relationship between the colonizer and the colonized. That how this colonizer is representing this colonized, that colonized thing, is it helpful or not? Whether this colonialism helped them or not, that is the question he is raising here. Then the locus of ambivalence in the novel Last Man in Tower. So where we are finding this locus of ambivalence. So there is this first concept of this Vishram society itself. That this Vishram society's location is somehow built like there is at the other side there is this airport, and then other side there are slums. So it is like paradoxical. At the same time there is this slums which represents poverty, and then there are these airport which are again stands with so-called this eliteness. So these things are also that it represents paradoxical development. Then there is this Dharmensha. Often people represent him as an antagonist, though this Adiga never openly accept those things in lots of interviews. So Dharmensha, there are certain incidents which has happened with this Dharmensha, which making him this a capitalist. He has suffered a lot during his past. He is doing a kind of a job which are illegal. He is doing jobs in Dubai and then in Pakistan. So he thinks that there is the only way. Sometimes he accepts that this stealing somebody's things, or other we can say this thieves. Sometimes one needs to be thief to reach at certain level. And at the end, what happens once he is able to convince all those residents? He's saying that he is remembering his past, where his wife comes in his memory and say that this memory, this remembrance itself is a weakness for him. He is not ready to go backward. He is looking forward, that whatever has happened to him, he's not seeing these things as a positive side. It is considered as a negative. So he's in some conflict whether he should consider those things negative or positive. And if we take another example of Rabindranath's work, there is the White Tiger, where this Balram never wants to go back to this village from where he has left. So same thing, this Dharmensha is also. Then there is this another character, Mrs. Pinto, who she's a blind lady. So she is somehow now familiar with the building steps. So if she switches to this new building, then again she will have to remember all those steps. So again it is a symbolic meaning again given there. Then this Mrs. Arrigo, she feels that this is more like a scam. That how could a person offers us money to common people, to the residents? That is also the conflict which she suffers. Then there is this Mrs. Kadwa. So see what happens with this Mrs. Gadhvi is that he thinks that to build a good society, he has to cooperate, because this is how this society is done, this cooperative society. Everybody has to cooperate. So if this larger numbers of people are at certain level, on certain side, then he himself has to go with those group. So that is why he is also joining that group of residents. There is, we can say there are two groups now. One that is of these residents, and then there is this another group which is of masterji. Then this Mary has now problem of livelihood. So if they will demolish this building, then now what would happen to those people who are there working as a cleaner? He is referring this word like a kachra wali bai. That is the one, the chutnification of language. That is what he is referring. And then there are these Ajwani also. He is also coming in that category. So I think if we look at the contemporary issue which is going on in India, so I think a few days ago maybe there is this demolition of twin towers in Noida, which is quite relevant here as well. Then there is this Masterji, memory and strength. So what happens to Master, who is a retired teacher, is opposing this offer given by Dharmensha. Is thinking that there is this attachment with this building. He is not ready to leave this building. And he has this pure fear that there is no surety whether this luxurious life will provide happiness, rather eternal happiness or not. And then what happened? He's living along. His wife is already dead. So his wife is more like a strength for him, uh, which is quite contradictory for Dharmensha. His wife, he seems like she's weakness for Dharmensha, and for this Masterji, his wife and daughter, they are strength for him. So we can see the ideological struggle of both these characters. Then there at the last there are these Visramites, who are the residents. This is how this Adhika is referring them. Fail to achieve happiness, guilt is there. So at the end, what happened? Now they are living this luxurious life. They have this livelihood, but there is guilt, which is this guilt is not allowing these people to live happily. So that is what we find this ambivalence in this novel Last Man in Tower. The next question is about this. There are some of the this quotation which we can connect with this so-called ideology of ambivalence. In a socialist economy, the small businessman has to be a thief to prosper. So that is what this Dharmin Shah is telling. Before he was 20, he was smuggling goods from Dubai and Pakistan. Yes, what compunction did he have about dealing with the enemy when he was treated as a bastard in his own country? It is questioning this honest life, whether one has to remain honest throughout the life or not, and what way this Dharmen Shah is choosing. Then there is at the other side, another quotation is given: this man of our generation, we have seen such trouble, wars, emergencies, election, we can survive. But 3 pages later, the same man prays to his dead wife Purnima, stoop down and lift me from this land of the living. So see again this Masterji. So we can see the first quotation. He's saying that we can survive in this dire situation as well. But at the after some pages, again he's referring that he's praying to his wife, late wife, that he also wants. Now he's not ready to live because he's suffering from now ambivalence. Is rather succumbing to this situation. So then the question is about what prompts the ambivalence. So we can see that there are some reasons which are in a way creating ambivalence in society. So there is this slower economical growth. So there is this clash. Why some of the people of society are becoming way richer than those people whose economy is not rising at all. Then there is this widening inequality. So inequality is rising. That is what it leads to this ambivalence. Almost everybody has a dream to be prosper, but some are able and some are not able to reach at that level. Then this societal division, they can clearly see that there is this divisions are going on in and all around us. The next point is about amending laws. When, for example, people like this Dharmen Shah, they can change laws whenever they want, because that is how they are controlling capital, and that is how he is able to, for example, in the White Tiger also. Once this Balram is becoming this rich guy, he is bribing to those policemen whenever he is required to provide money to fulfill his goal. So same way here, this Dharmen Shah is also doing the same. Then this is about individual happiness. This individual happiness is something same rather narcissistic view. So this Dharmen Shah is not seeing the happiness of everybody. He wants to conquer his past. That is what he's referring. He wants to live in present only, and he wants to fulfill his individual goals. Then next point is about integrated ruling class political ideological project. So there are this ruling class, they will come with their political ideology, and then there is this ambivalence. So if they succumb, normally these common people who succumbs to certain ideologies, and then that is what it leads to ambivalence. They cannot decide that which party is helping them, whether ruling party is helping them, is it beneficial for common people or not, or is it just like which is just looks from outside that they have these good schemes for common people, but actually in reality it is not like that. In conclusion, there is this question that it raises disturbing questions about contemporary ideas of national development. So, in and around, we are seeing nowadays that there is this question about national development. What is development? These smart cities and all these ideas are coming, but is it really helpful to this overall happiness of people or not? Maybe it is an era of indiscriminate capitalism. So one reason we can give that why certain these characters, why people are suffering from this ambivalence. So that is because of this indiscriminate capitalism. And then there is this, as per this is the view of the national. So they are saying that who is right, the champions of idealism or the practical developers of glittering cities that promise take India out of centuries of backwardness. So they are saying that if we go with these capitalist motives, then there are chances that India can come out from this backwardness. But what we are saying that even if, like we can see that though India is considered as a democratic nation, or rather you can say socialist nation, but at the same time there are this crony capitalism which is going on, which is not helping a common people to reach at certain heights. So that is it. Yes. Thank you. These are the references.
Yes, questions in the comment here.
Good evening, all of you. Today, in this specific area of research, I am presenting on Mahasweta Devi, literature, politics, and activism. Mahasweta Devi, she is a Bengali writer writing fiction for tribals, oppressed, downtrodden, marginalized community of West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, Assam. Mahasweta Devi, in her Times of India interview of 5th January 2000, says that my social activism is the driving force of all my literary activities. Further, she writes in her introduction of the five plays that a responsible writer standing at a turning point in the history has to take stand in defense of the exploited. Otherwise, history would never forgive him. I desire a transformation of the present social system. After 31 years of independence, I find my people still groaning under hunger, landlessness, indebtedness, and bonded labor. An anger, luminous, burning, and passionate, directed against a system that has failed to liberate my people from these constraints, is the only source of inspiration for all my writing. Her creative politics. Literature, as a responsible act, originates from historical commitments, necessitated to be written from a certain political stand to achieve the transformation of the unjust social system. Literature of her is a powerful, politically committed statement in favor of the subaltern. Her creative writings transcend the bounds of literariness and present themselves as powerful socio-political and historical tracts. By resisting the conventional literary ethos of art for art's sake, she aligns with the secondary trajectory of literature, that is, art for life's sake. Wherein literature is a political act, in it, meaning springs from its interaction with life. Political activism. Mahasweta's engagement with the issue of nation in her writings is multidimensional. She critiques the constructions of the political as well as the socio-religious economic constitution of the nation. She critiques the political constitution of India as it gives the marginals basic rights and representation only in law, not in application. Apart from constitutional questioning, Mahasweta's texts problematize the supposedly modern, progressive, developmentalist character of the nation state. The misguided notion of national development ravages the pristine land, robs it of all its beauty, thus endangering the ecological balance of the region and depriving the local inhabitants of their basic means of livelihood. Political activism, in that only the capitalist nationalist forces take away the control of the natives' land, which is their most valuable asset, and thus strengthen their power hold over the tribal. Mahasweta has been working and speaking about the other aid India through her political activism and her writing. In her literature, she questions the othering of this sub-nation that constitute approximately 67.6 million people, roughly 8% of the national population, by the dominant ruling Indian national state. She has a pure sun-like rage for the imbalance and oppressive system of the government machinery that results in sacrificing their tribals' lives sometimes. This startles Devi's sympathetic heart, and she reflects this agony with anger mixed to feel that she doesn't hesitate to support justified violence in this case. She writes in an introduction of Bitter Soil that the sole purpose of my writing is to expose the many faces of the exploiting agencies. My experience keeps me perpetually angry and makes me ruthlessly unforgiving towards the exploiters for the exploiting system. That the mainstream remains totally oblivious of the tribal situation furthers that burning anger. I, believing, believe in anger, in justified violence, and so peel the mask of the face of the India, which is projected by the government to expose its naked brutality, savagery, and caste and class exploitation, and place this India, a hydra-headed monster, before a people's court, the people being the oppressed millions. Activist art. How and where then do we slot Mahasweta as a third word artist, activist, intellectual? This is the raising question of the identity of the author. Her aesthetics is deeply implicated in activism. Rather, it is her activism that becomes the defining principle of her aesthetics. She sees her art as a means of negotiating with nation. As she writes in introduction of Five Plays, I have never had the capacity nor the urge to create art for art's sake. Since I haven't learned to do anything more useful, I have gone on writing. I have found authentic documentation to be the best medium for protest against injustice and exploitation. Mahasweta, with her fictional histories like Bashaitudu, Rudali, Statue, the fairy tale of Mohanpur, aims to resurrect and record the tribal struggles and revolts conveniently forgotten by the official history of the nation. Her subaltern gendered writings reject the hegemony of the mainstream historical projections. Her fiction strikes at the very foundations of the dominant nationalist historiography by underscoring the blatant fact of its partial representation of many and a consequent non representation of many other. She writes the history of the nation by representing it from the point of view of the subaltern Dalit tribal. At a glance, Mahasweta's writings do not reflect the characteristics of woman's perspective, and the writer herself is uneasy with being labeled as a feminist writer. She asserts in her interview, I never consider myself as a woman writer, as a feminist. Nothing. I'm a writer. I'm a writer, and when I write of such people who live much below the poverty lines. They are men, women, children. I do not isolate the women. Women have to play a lot. They also have their special problems. They come to my stories naturally, not just to uphold the woman. A woman in the poorer class, she suffers because of her class. She suffers because of her body. That is always there. That has to be brought out, but that does not mean I am especially gender biased. Devi assumes manifold identities. She is a storyteller and a truth teller. She is an elite who is a grassroots activist. It is due to the fact of her having such multifarious identities that she is able to problematize the wide canvas of the supposedly true, factual, written history on the one hand and revitalize oral legends and mythology on the other. A realistic depiction of the conditions and struggles of the indigenous people is the avowed aim of her writing. With an arsenal of realistic fiction and journalism, she struggles hard to bring to mainstream India's attention the plight and the stories of its tribal and lower caste citizens. Her activism involves engagement through literary creation with issues which impinge on the lives of her subjects to empower the subject and enlighten the target reader. References.
Check the references. You should not have any mistake. We have done anyway in other citations. Correct? See that there are no mistakes.
Is it visible? Good evening to all. In the last day of our presentation, on which we are presenting specific area of our research, I am going to deal with Occupy the Infinite, a work by Bhatt, and I am going to deal with this work from eco-critical perspective. That how the author has presented environmental issues, concerns, as well as environment as a dominant as character in this work. Before we see from the eco-critical perspective, let's have some uh, eyes on the introduction of this text. Akupar, which is originally written in Gujarati language by Bhatt in 2010, and later on it is translated into English language in 2014 by Piyush Gadhvi and Suresh Joshi. My mistake, Piyush Joshi and Suresh Gadhvi. Yes, Bhatt is known for his kind of content and writing, which is based on eco-critical content. His many of the works has uh, dig out the issues of environmental concerns. He has written so many works, like prose works, in which he has found some kind of aspects which is quite dealing with environment. Even he has written verse as well, and one of his famous verse is ઓચિંતું કોઈ મને રસ્તે મળે ને કદી હળવેથી પૂછે કે કેમ છે આપણે તો કહીએ કે દરિયાશી મોજ અને ઉપરથી કુદરતની રેમ છે. But here I am going to deal with the prose work. Occupy the Infinite revolves around the environmental concept and man and nature relationship and the concept of coexistence. First, let's deal with the story outline, how the story takes place, and what is the story outline in the Occupy the Infinite. The story of the novel takes place at the region of Gir, which is situated in Junagadh. It is also considered as a region of Maldharis as well as Asiatic lions. It begins with the unnamed narrator, who is a painter as well as the protagonist of the story, who comes to visit the region of Gir as he has to paint the earth elements in the part of his project. And when he visits the Gir, he stays in the Gir, and incidents has happened with him. And with these incidents, the theme of eco-criticism, the environmental concerns, has dig out. These incidents proved life-changing to the unnamed narrator as he realized the importance of Mother Nature, that is our environment, and developed his opinion of being existence and coexistence at the end of the novel. There are so many characters in the novel. Basically, the characters here are not dominant. The characters thinking about the nature is dominant. As in yesterday's presentation, there was a word that when a work is to be analyzed and is to be analyzed from the eco-critical perspective, then character should be the nature as a dominance. So here there are so many characters, but the characters important only through his or her thinking. Characters like Aima, Sansai, Dhanu, Mustafa, Karman, Lajo, Ravata, Gopal Bhai, etc. There are so many other characters, but Bhatt has portrayed almost all the characters with the touch of eco-critical sense in them. The story of the novel effortlessly covers many issues, mostly ecological, but also some social, cultural, man-nature conflict, hunting superstitions elements, and so on. Mukesh Modi, who has written a work titled as Yatra Bhitarni in Gujarati language. It is a basically collection of all the works of Bhatt and the opinion of Mukesh Modi on all the works of Bhatt, in which he has mentioned about Occupy, that જો તમે અકુપારમાંથી કોઈ મોટી ઘટનાની અપેક્ષા રાખતા હો તો નિષ્ફળ જશો. જો તમે એવી અપેક્ષા રાખતા હો કે વાર્તા રસિક રીતે આગળ વધતી હશે તો પણ તમને નિષ્ફળતા સાંપડશે. અહીં નથી નાયક નાયિકા વચ્ચે પ્રેમની વાતો, અહીં નથી કોઈ ખૂંખાર ઘટનાઓ. જો ગીરને સ્થળ નહીં પણ સૂક્ષ્મ રીતે જાણવી હોય તો અકુપાર વાંચવી રહી. જો પરંપરાગત સહ અસ્તિત્વ શું હોઈ શકે એની સંવેદના લેવી હોય તો આ કથા વાંચવી રહી. Now let's deal with the story, or let's deal with how the characters and incidents in the work Occupy the Infinite has dealt with the eco-critical aspects, or how the work has dealing with the eco-critical elements.
So there are some characters as well as some incidents that I have found from this work, which deals with the environmental issues as well as which deals with the taking place environment as a main dominance of the story. There is no any exaggeration in saying that Occupy the Infinite is truly an eco-critical text, as it is loaded with incidents which strike our environmental issues or senses. Here are some prominent incidents which depicts eco-criticism at its central place. The first, I have found two or three characters who has eco-critical sense. Among them, first character is the character of Science, who is considered as a central character, as she is consciously considering herself as she is the protector of nature. She is the protector of the region of Gir. She is portrayed as the protector of nature. She unfolds the eco-critical sense through her personality. She is described as protector of Gir and especially Asiatic lions in Gir, as she believes that Gir is the abode of lions only. We humans have entered in their abode, so that we should take care of lions and Gir as well. Furthermore, in one of the incidents, when Sansai comes to know about hunting and killing of lion in Gir, she becomes quite furious and start wandering from one place to another in order to find the root of that hunting, that who is the hunter who has hunted the lion, as she was believing that the Gir, the region, is not for the humans, because Gir is for animals, Gir is for nature. We have entered into this religion. Animal has its own boundaries. Animals have its own entities. Humans have to adjust it. In short, Sansa is described here as a Jogmaya who can do anything to save wildlife in Gir and can not hear anything wrong about the region of Gir as well. The second character I have found is Aima, who is the eldest and wisest character of the novel. The opening line of the story, which is spoken by Aima, and it is also quite important line, that is Khamma Garne. And in English, it is considered as the May the Gir be blessed. This line is spoken by Aima, and it is quite significant because understanding each and every entity represented in the novel is only depending on this line. How this line signifies that Aima is not only saying Khama to any particular soul or part, but she is asking Khama to the whole Gir, as she believes that lions, plant, insects, land, and any other elements of nature are equally a living part of Gir like inhabitants of Gir, that is human being. Aima believes everything is alive in the Gir and humans need to take all these as living entity and should respect it. The second aspect, that is flora and fauna, that is animal and plants. Here, one of the interesting aspect is that Dhruvat has not only focused on the one particular aspect of environment. He has focused on land, he has focused on animals, he has focused on inanimate objects, as well as he has focused on plants as well. So all the elements are there here to deal with the eco-criticism in a theoretical framework. Being the oldest inhabitant of Gir, Aima has a knowledge of each and every aspect of this region. She always keeps her eye on each particles of region and notices even a minor change in it. Once she was roaming in the Gir in the story and she saw Kuvadio. Kuvadio is considered as the plant in this story that where the Kuvadio plant grows, the land becomes barren. At that land nothing can grow. It is the belief in the story. And here in one of the incidents, Aima saw that Kuvadio has grown, and where he notices she was roaming in the Gir and she saw Kuvadio, a plant which was growing in the land, and she became anxious and she said, I have never heard or seen since my birth that this plant of Kuvadio is there in Gir. She explained on growing Kuvadio that people of Gir are not respecting their own nature, that is our land, that is our animals, that is whatever inanimate objects that is surrounded by us, that people are not respecting it, as we have to take something from the nature. We usually or very easily takes it from the nature, but exactly we are respecting the nature. So the answer will be no, we are not respecting the nature. And that is the thing that we should need to focus on, that if, as we are respecting ourselves as a human being, we have to respect the other entities as well. She explains on growing Kuadio that people of Gir are not respecting their own nature. They have become disrespected towards nature. That is why Kuadio has grown in Gir as a part of consequences of disrespecting nature by humans. Here it is one of the important aspect, that if we don't respect our nature, if we don't respect our coexistence things, then there will be a consequences, and that consequences one must need to follow. Here, some of the incidents related to animals and their identity. First, we have discussed plant. Now, we are discussing about animal and their identity. In the initial part of the novel, unnamed narrator observes that people of Gir calls animal by their name, as Sansai calls a lioness by her name Ramjana. Later on, he finds out that people in Gir are habituated to give names to animals as we give to humans. This observation leads to believe that animals do have their identity and importance like humans. Here, unnamed narrator, who is the protagonist of the story, first finds himself quite observing that why animal has given name, because name is given to only human being. But then he finds out that animal also can have their own identity. That is why the name is also given to each and particular animals in order to distinguish one animal from another, whether it is on a same species or other or any different species. Second is, in one of the narration, once lion attacked on Dhanu. Dhanu is the character who always remains surrounded by the animals, and he has a quite a friendly nature or friendly relationship with animals, and especially with the lions. But here he got attacked by lion and injured him directly, drastically. He was taken to hospital. Though Dhanu was badly injured by lion, he did not show his hatred towards attacker. What we do, if another person attacks on us, or if another person in any kind harms on us, then we just start hating that person, that she or he is so and so. But here, look at the relationship between man and nature, that Dhanu got attacked by lion, he got drastically damaged, he got drastically harmed, but he did not head to this lion. Why? Because he explains that though lion attacked on me, but lion has no any intention to kill me. For that, he gives three reasons by raising three fingers. There are three proofs. One, he did not hold me from the throat. Showing the second finger, he said he did not even shake his hand. Otherwise, he would have torn off my shoulder. And then, lifting the third, he said I was fallen down, but he did not sit on me. He sat on me as he would do to kill. His height would have. Dhanu stopped talking and then once again said his intention was not to kill me. Next, the last but the finest incident of the work that I find, that once what happens, lion was roaming on the road and truck was coming in front of this lion. So due to the excess of light, lion has to save his life. That is why he jumped into the pool. But due to darkness, he couldn't find out the measurement of that pool, and he jumped into the pool and got killed by herself due to his misconception or miscalculation of his height. And when villagers came to know about this incident, that lion has got killed by this kind of incident, or he is dead by this kind of incident, so all the villagers managed a particular funeral for this lion as humans has to given. So this also shows that here Dhruv Bhatt has compared human being and nature as a same aspect, and the treatment that is given by a people of Gir to lion or people of Gir to any other natural aspect is equally which is given to a human being. Now the last, that is inanimate object taken as a living being. As we have already seen that people of Gir treat animals as their own family members, one more thing here to mention is that not only animals are named, but inanimate objects like heels are also given name. There is one character Ravata who is a blind man, and due to his blindness he was not able to marry. He even didn't want to marry, but there was a belief, if you have eaten someone's food, then you have to return it by feeding them. That is why what he does, that he adopts two hills, that is Gantlo and Gantli. The name is also, the names are also given to that hills, that Gantlo and Gantli, and he arranges a marriage between them. One hill is adopted by Ravata, and the second hill Ravata requests to adopt by a particular king who was ruling at that time. And then he arranges a marriage, because due to this marriage the people of the Gir can feed by the Ravata. And here there is one particular song જે આપણે ફટાણા ગાઈએ લગ્નમાં, that kind of song is also mentioned here, that ઘંટલો પૈણે ઘંટલીને અણવર વાહા ઢોર, હિરણ મેઘડ ઝાનડિયુને ગરમા ઝાકમ જોર. So these are the incidents from which I found some kind of environmental aspects or eco-critical aspects or perspective in the Kupar the Infinite. At last, I have found some quotes, some lines which shows eco-critical sense in its own words. So first, further I have mentioned that Khama Garne, which is the significant line of this work. Second one is, we don't want mapped gear. Let be so for tourists. For us, Gir is wherever the line walks. Let it be. This is spoken by Sansai, the main character of the story, during one discussion when what kind of mapping Gir should be, how many boundaries or what kind of boundaries Gir can have. So she says that there is no mapped Gir because Gir is the place where lion walks. Next one is, I have never heard that lion, leopard and scorpions ever killed the number of people killed by the cars and trucks and motorcycles on the roads would be. We read daily in papers that don't people die in quarreling for nothing, and yet does anyone have time to say Khama to the earth? This is spoken by Aima when one of the citizens of a city has asked the question to Aima during one presentation, during one project work, that you don't want to live in the city. At that time, Aima has quoted this line. Then I have taken line from the original Gujarati text, that is Akupar. This line is spoken by narrator when he realizes the importance of nature, when he realizes the importance of the region of Gir. હા, આ ગીર છે, માત્ર ગીર, રેવતાચલની પરમ મનોહર પુત્રી, જગતના તમામ ભૂભાગોથી અલગ, આગવું અને પોતીકું વાતાવરણ ધરાવતી, હંમેશા જીવતી, સદા સોહાગણ, સદા મોહક ગીર, સાનસાઈની ગાંડી ગીર, જગત સમસ્તમાં નારી વાચક નામે ઓળખાતી આ એકમાત્ર વિકટ ભૂ ને પોતાના નામ સિવાયના બધા જ વર્ણનો, બધા જ સંબોધનો અધૂરા પડે. The next one is spoken by Sansai while it was a kind of discussion again regarding the place, that it is the place of a human being or it is the place of animals. At that time Sansai has spoken, હાવજો વધી ગયા એટલે બારા નીકળી ગયા. એ બધી વાતું છાપાની, ઘર ક્યાં લગડ કહેવાય એની બહારનાવને શું ખબર પડે. હાસુ તો ઈ કે ઘરની માલકોણ આપણે રહેવા માંડ્યા, તોય ઘરના જીવ માતરે આપણી અમન્યા રાખી, એની જગ્યા દબાતી ગઈ એમ ઈ અંદર જાતા ગયા. પછી હાવજ હોય કે બીજો જીવ જાય ક્યાં? Last one is also spoken. Last one is spoken by a character named Lajo, who has a very attraction towards her cow, and this cow is attacked by a lion, and Lajo has seen the whole scene, that lion is killing her cow and he is eating the cow. At that time she speaks that સિંહુનું પેટે કંઈક માગતું હશે ને, ત્યારે જ પકડીને માંજે કે મેં ગિરવાણ હાવજુને દાનમાં દઈ દીધી. So this is it for now. Thank you.
Still quite a long day, 3 hours and 11 minutes. By and large, uh, in all these three presentations, we come to know that you are aware about research methodology, what are the key aspects that how the research is to be done and written also. Second, what is your general area? That also now you are aware. And today you presented on specific area. So where is your research located? That you become clear about this idea from these three things. Method of doing research, what is the general area, and what is the specific area within which you are going to work also. A few of you need to look at better resources and critical insight. So morning also we have suggested a couple of students that literary research is not only about appreciating a work of art. We call it in Gujarati, rasa swad karao, sahitya no aswad karao. Now that is not research. So you analyze a work of art, that is not research. Research is critical insight. It is a new way of looking or questioning with whatever contemporary happenings are going on. So that is where the research becomes very important. Many of you are still looking at something that was much older one. Means text can be older one, but the way of looking has to be new. Your way of looking has to be newer way. That what is the contemporary happenings in that lens. In ecocriticism, yesterday also we referred to that, or even in globalization also. So what is happening in that lens today? That is to be seen here. So in case of Pallavi also, if you read Katherine Mansfield, then still in a deeper way, you will have to investigate. Smita also. Both the poems that you dealt were normally like rasa swad of the poems, rather than like, there are no reference of any critic. So if there is no critics are referred in your presentation, then you are not applying those ideas. Also, you are just generally talking about what is in that particular poem. Okay? So critical reading is necessary. That there. Okay? Even in Surbhi's case, there was one good reference of Ashcroft where mimicry idea is coming. Yeah? Mimicry idea. But again, now mimicking that has become quite old also. Orientalism, Edward Said to this idea. So even now, Ashcroft, last time when we had a live session with our students also joined there, he is now not talking about this mimicry, he is talking about Palestine issue. Now, even today, even Palestine issue is quite old. So how in globalization, when you are trying to contextualize it, how will you locate it? Because post-colonial critics are now even moving from globalization to climate change now. And the very idea of climate change is connected with globalization also. So what is that idea? That is to be seen. So normally globalization, as Noam Chomsky and they all have thought that it will be a global village and it will give a good space to all the human beings, kind of equality or movement will be good. But after 20 years or 20, 25 years, what we have seen is that it is only helping multinational companies. Big corporations are only getting the advantage and transnational identities are only getting the benefit. The normal human beings are still not getting the advantage. So transnational identities, like they are all corporate people. They are multinationals also. They will do wrong thing in one country and easily hide in another country. And like the world will keep on watching, but none can do anything. Now, this is the adverse effect of globalization. So Noam Chomsky wanted to say that rules should be global. A criminal of one place should be criminal everywhere. Human rights should be at the center. Human rights should be at the center. So that is where people were trying to look at the thing. And now, because of trade war, globalization is facing problems also. And it is not because of people. It is because of companies' interest. So we say that, well, my things and those things that people are this and that, but those people are easily manipulated by global companies now. Now, those companies may not be only American, they may be our companies also. So we can't only say that American company. Now that can be the company owned by Indians also, which might be exploiting the people in a different way. So that also how people will see. And how can you find that in the older text? Then it becomes significant. Then you have to see those aspects also. Yogeshwari and Smita, when they're talking about ecology, now there are very interesting concepts that ecology, climate change is growing. One concept is about shallow ecology and deep ecology. So when we look at from an anthropocentric point of view, like human centric, that is where we see that what is my interest in nature. So I will take care of nature because my interest is there. It is not for the sake of nature that I am doing. But constantly we have to have a tree. Why? Because it will give me shade. So that is again human centric. That is shallow ecology. Shallow ecology is seen there, where there is man centric. It is not like for the sake of ecology you have to do that. So in ecology, it is not always beautiful thing. There are wild things also. There are things like when lion is killing the human, that also you take a side of lion also. Like in a Kupar, that example comes, that you take a side of lion also. That level, he might be hungry. That is deep ecology. That is how it operates also. It was Arne Nice who gave this concept of deep ecology and got inspired from Rachel Carson's book, The Silent Spring. The Silent Spring. So this all, the recent debates of ecology and ecocriticism, Silent Spring is considered as one of the important texts. And what was there, that there is Rachel Carson who goes there and suddenly finds in one summer vacation that there are no this chirping of birds. So why there is no noise and this chirping there? And then when she tried to look at it, found that there was a spread of DDT, and because of that, mosquitoes are not able to grow. And if mosquitoes do not grow, then when the birds give eggs, and when their little ones come out, their food is insects. So if you destroy insects, then the birds will get destroyed. That food chain is what it says. So for my cleanliness, my Swachhta Abhiyan, I clean all the gardens and everything. But then I am damaging the ecology. I am not making the earth beautiful. My cleanliness drive is damaging the ecology. So that from that way they try to look those things. So it is not only appreciating sun or natural elements or water only. They would rather question that we would have never imagined that water can be a sellable commodity. But it is there. Water is now sellable. So who is selling? Companies are selling. So who is now doing damage to the ecology? Companies. So that is how it gets. So now, if you can't see that, then there is a problem. Even with writers also many times. Writers also another thing. In Dhruv Bhatt's case, we have discussed in our class is another novel, Tatvamasi. That so when Narmada Dam is being built, during the same time he's writing Tatvamasi about Narmada, but there is no concern about the damage of Narmada Dam. Now, because now people are considering dams as a problem for ecology. So, but can we look at that idea, because there is development on the other side. So how deeply that can be seen in the eco-critical reading, that will be very important to be seen. Even when you see ecofeminism along with this shallow and deep, then as soon as the word comes that ek matra nari vachak, suddenly you strike that this is problematic. This is not good, that is how you see. So that again needs to be examined, re-examined or questioned with those insights. So that is critical reading is necessary in each and everything. So there may be lots of good things there, but somewhere you find a loose stone. In the entire beautifully constructed narrative, somewhere loose stone, and that becomes something for you to strike at. And then you are reading against the text. You are not succumbing to text, but you are reading against the text. That is very important when those things are done also. Vipul has done good work and that. Okay, Vrutti's also was good references. Ruchi also discussed well. Yes, Prakruti also connected very well. This concepts there. Okay. Okay, so we end our session here. Let me end the live streaming.